Chapter 274. After the last time the head of the Chunyang Palace asked Elder Su to find the Taishaman for an explanation, the Taishaman said that Li Qingxun and Yang Chun were personal grievances, the sect would not interfere, and they could solve it privately. But Yang Chun knew that although the Taishaman said so, the head of the Chunyang Palace did not want Yang Chun to go to the door to solve personal grievances with Li Qingxun, not for anything else, but because the Taishaman were powerful. But now it was not Yang Chen's business. The initiator was very sure of the green jade Immortal Island. No matter how powerful the Taishaman were, it was impossible to suppress the green jade Immortal Island. If Shan could not be blamed, then Yang Chun could only be blamed. The problem was that now Li Qingxun obviously did not dare to confront, and even wanted to use this challenge to hit Yang Chun. Getting the news from other cultivators, Yang Chun suddenly had a spirit. He couldn't care about anything, and directly rushed back to the Chunyang Palace. He couldn't miss such an opportunity. Since Li Qingxun came to the door, Yang Chun would never mind letting him go. How did you get involved with Elder Hua of the Blue Cloud sect? Returning to the Chunyang Palace, the first thing Yang Chun did was to see his master. Gao Yu saw Yang Chen's face for the first time. Gao Yu couldn't help but care. Although her own disciples' cultivation was still low, only in the early stage of the foundation stage, but the means of tormenting things was not small. Elder Wu Xiong has not yet ascended, and he already has another Elder Hua wanting to cover him, which made people sincerely envious. Let's wait for the head of the palace and the ancestor to come and talk about it together. Yang Chen knew that such a thing had happened. The head of the palace and the ancestor Wang Yong would definitely come over, and he was too lazy to say it again. Gao Yu looked at Yang Chun angrily and ordered her slave to send a letter to the head of the palace and Wang Yong. Yang Chen's disciple was by no means a worry-free disciple, but he was also the worry-free disciple, which really made Gao Yu feel conflicted. Saying that he was worrisome was because Yang Chun seemed to dare to provoke anyone. In front of him was Elder Wu Xiong. Behind him was Elder Hua Wanning. They were all masters of the Deshang stage, but they were not afraid of being blown to the road to the underworld. To say that Yang Chun was worry-free was because Gao Yu almost didn't have to worry about anything. Cultivation, alchemy, refining, arrays, and the like, she didn't have to worry about anything at all. Even the safety issue that he needed to worry about the most, under the public support of Elder Wu Xiong and Elder Hua Wanning, no one would dare to do anything to Yang Chun. Her own master seemed to be a bit superfluous. Gao Yu's depression lay in this. However, even so, she was very satisfied with Yang Chun. She could feel the strong love from Yang Chun. With such a disciple, what more could she ask for? The head of the palace and Wang Yong came very quickly, especially the head of the palace. After hearing the news of Elder Hua wanting, he was a little surprised. Yang Chun was so lucky to have a relationship with another master of the Deshang stage, and it was a master who owed Yang Chun a favor, which made the head of the palace very happy. This also meant that if this favor was used properly, Chunyang Palace could maintain a good relationship with the Blue Cloud sect, which was beneficial to Chunyang Palace. Yang Chun, this disciple, was simply the lucky star of Chunyang Palace. Since he joined Chunyang Palace, whether it was the chi-seeking pill or the spiritual veins of the Fierce Sun Courtyard, whether it was Elder Wu Xiong or Elder Hua Wanning, whether it was the Hall of Eccentrics or the third-grade alchemist master, he always brought surprises to everyone. Waiting for Yang Chun to tell everyone what happened seemed to have become the tradition of the head of the palace, and Wang Yong every time after Yang Chun came back. The palace master knew that Yang Chun did not believe much in the other elders except for his own master ancestor Wang Yong. So no one else, only the two of them, plus Yang Chen's master Gao Yu listened. Listening to Yang Chen's vivid story of the Green Jade Immortal Island's Fairy Sure and the Blue Cloud sect, Gao Yu immediately expressed her dissatisfaction. When did Yang Chun do things in the name of Fairy Sure? How come I don't know? Gao Yu now couldn't see Yang Chun being wronged, and the tone of venting dissatisfaction was also very strong. Those are small things. Isn't the junior of Taishaman already guilty? Unlike Gao Yu's resentment, the head of the palace and Wang Yong considered more about the Deshang stage Elder Hua and the Blue Cloud sect. No one would have thought that Yang Chun could solve the entanglement of the blood demon vine. It was obviously a bit far-fetched to use a reason from a miscellaneous book. The blood demon vine was such a powerful thing. If there was a record, it would definitely be in the senior books of alchemy refining. It was impossible in the books of Chunyang Palace. Where did you learn about the way to deal with the blood demon vine? The head of the palace has not yet opened his mouth. He was pondering what way to ask, and the ancestor Wang Yong next to him had already asked very sensitively. However, he was not questioning, but giving Yang Chan an insurance endorsement. Don't be afraid, no matter what method you use, even if it is murder and arson, I will bear it for you. The latter sentence, on the one hand, was for Yang Chun to hear. On the other hand, it was for the head of the palace. Anyway, no matter how Yang Chun got it, he couldn't use this to blame Yang Chun. This is not a secret now. Elder Wu Xiong told me last time. Yang Chun directly moved out Elder Wu Xiong. Anyway, no one could verify it face to face. Even if there was a master to verify it face to face, Elder Wu Xiong would definitely recognize it. The palace master and Wang Yong were stunned. It seemed that this was another insurance for Yang Chun by Wu Xiong before his ascension. Anyway, his ascension was imminent, and there was no need to do favors. He gave this favor to Yang Chun, which was also a kind of protection for Yang Chun. Things happened just after Wu Xiong left, which was really too much of coincidence. What's the matter with Sun Qingxue of the Blue Cloud sect? Why do you want to find her? The palace master asked again. Because Elder Wu Xiong also warned me about one thing. Yang Chun just took the opportunity to say about the dragon embryo spirit cultivation secret art. The other sects did not care, but Chunyang Palace could not afford to lose so many disciples. Not everyone was like Sun Qingxue. After their cultivation was abolished, they could still rebuke the world. The head of the palace listened to Yang Chen's story very seriously and did not say much, but his heart had begun to be secretly vigilant. The Taishaman Juniors challenged Yang Chun. How should we solve it? Gao Yuejian said for a long time, but did not say a word about Yang Chun being challenged, and could not help but ask. Master, it's very simple. Yang Chun replied with a smile. Let Home Master Su spread the news. Li Qingchen's cultivation base is at the peak of the foundation stage. The disciple admits defeat. If he really wants a challenge, it will be a matter of life and death. Chapter 275. This was what Yang Chun once said at the Celestial Stairway gathering in the face of Han Jinda, the disciple of the Tianquan sect who came to provoke. At that time, Han Jinda, who was also higher than Yang Chun, wanted to challenge Yang Chun, and Yang Chun directly admitted defeat. But everyone knew that Yang Chun did not really admit defeat, but forced Han Jinda and Yang Chun to have a life and death challenge. Now Yang Chun came to the same words. Presumably, he wanted to have a life and death battle with Li Qingchen. He is at the peak of the foundation stage. Yang Chun, do you have the confidence? Gao Yu certainly did not want Yang Chun, a disciple in the early stage of the foundation stage, to have a life and death challenge with a master in the peak of the foundation stage, and immediately asked anxiously, even if I am not sure, I have to fight. It is better than letting the masters of the Taishaman hate me from then on, and it is better to be restless day and night. Yang Chun smiled and replied to his master. Why is that? Gao Yu obviously did not think much about the reason in this regard. On the contrary, the head of the palace and Wang Yong heard Yang Chen's words, but they nodded knowingly. The actions of these two predecessors made Gao Yu even more puzzled. Li Qingchen will never confront me face to face, because it will make his reputation go down the drain. Yang Chen knew that his master had not yet grown to the realm of the master who took over everything, and many things were not so complete, so Yang Chen patiently explained to his master. For the Taishaman, it is the same. They are never willing to have a disciple who tells right and wrong in the sect, so they will certainly not be willing to have a face-to-face confrontation. Yang Chen's words made the head of the palace slightly nodded again. This is the same as my Chunyang palace having a disciple who betrays the sect, Chu Hong. It is really a shame for the sect. As if encouraged, Yang Chun continued. The Taishaman would rather have a disciple who is not as good as others, and will not be willing to have a villain disciple who shames the sect. Comparatively speaking, between the reputation of being inferior to others and the reputation of the sect for not recognizing people, the former was more acceptable. After all, there were a lot of factors that could affect one's skills. It was not shameful to lose if one could not win. Li Qingxun's reputation was the only one that was shameful. It would not implicate the Taishaman. Gao Yu quickly understood this point, but she still had some doubts. They don't want to carry a bad reputation. But what does it have to do with you not accepting the challenge? How can you be hated by a master? If I don't accept the challenge, it means that I want to confront him. Inevitably, Li Qingxun's reputation will fall to the ground, and the Taishaman will be ridiculed by everyone. Yang Shan explained with a smile. In this case, the masters of Taishaman do not dare to vent their anger on the green jade Immortal Island, but they will vent their anger on me. They can find an opportunity to end my life. Gao Yu listened and nodded frequently. Thinking about it this way, it seemed to be true. She couldn't help but look up at Yang Shun, who was talking with confidence and composure. It seemed that this apprentice had a clear mind. But if I agree to the life and death challenge, then no matter what, this is a personal grievance between me and Li Qingxun. I am giving the Taishaman a way out. Yang Chan saw his master looking over, and he smiled more and more happily. With the temperament of the Taishaman masters, since it is a personal grievance, no matter what the result is, they will not care much. If I don't accept the challenge, I will face the hatred of countless Taishaman masters in the future. I would rather choose to fight with Li Qingxun to solve this grievance. Yang Chan knew that Gao Yu had gradually understood, and the summary of the words was a little simpler. Then accept the challenge. Why do you have to have a life and death challenge? Gao Yu was worried about the life and death of Yang Chun, and she didn't care about other things. Because if there is no life and death, the Green Jade Immortal Island must let the two of us confront each other. This is what the Taishaman can't accept in any case. Yang Chan said very helplessly, since the Taishaman have already said it first, we have a personal grievance, so they will let Li Qingxun issue a challenge. In fact, whether this challenge is a life and death challenge or not, we have to decide life and death. Instead of this, it is better for me to issue a life and death challenge, so that they can step down and have nothing to say. Doesn't Senior Hua wanting to take care of you? Gao Yu remembered what Yang Chan had just said about Hua wanting and hurriedly asked, if you don't agree, can they take the risk of offending Elder Hua to kill you? It is because of the care of Elder Hua wanting that this life and death challenge is the only opportunity for the Taishaman to kill me without worrying about Elder Hua's blame. Yang Chun was very sober. He knew that some things were not changed by personal will. In fact, Li Qingxun is very pitiful. He has been abandoned by the Taishaman. Why do you say that? Gao Yu was confused by Yang Chun and asked again in doubt. Because whether he wins or loses, he can't escape the word death. Yang Chun smiled. This was the place that made him the happiest. If he wins, I will die and Li Qingxun will be executed. On the one hand, it will calm the anger of Elder Hua. On the other hand, the Taishaman will make a posture of righteousness to the Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island. If you win? Gao Yu was like a curious baby in front of Yang Chun. If I win, he will die. Yang Chun replied with a smile. But the Taishaman will still admit their mistakes to the Green Jade Immortal Island and admit that they have accepted a worthless disciple. Didn't you say that the Taishaman are not willing to bear the reputation of not knowing people? Gao Yu's eyes stared and retorted. They just don't want to be forced to admit it. Yang Chun shook his head slowly. In fact, when Fairy Sure confronted this face-to-face confrontation, the Taishaman have already been forced into a corner. Instead of being forced to admit it, it is better to admit it voluntarily. It's just that they don't want to bow their heads without any action. So they arrange a challenge as a way out of the situation. Gao Yu was angry. The matter of the Taishaman actually required Yang Chun to take risks. How could Gao Yu accept this? Yes. Yang Chun nodded. In fact, some people in Taishaman are probably eager for Li Qingxun to die in my hands at this moment. This is the best ending. In this way, they don't have to worry about the censure of Elder Wu Xiong and Elder Hua at all, as long as they have an explanation to the green jade Immortal Island. When Gao Yu and Yang Chun asked and answered, the head of the palace and the ancestor Wang Yong listened with a smile, and no one spoke. The more they listened, the more smiles on their faces. Looking at Yang Chun and his apprentice, the two of them seemed to be looking at a treasure. In this way, the Green Jade Immortal Island is also involved in this matter. Otherwise, they can confront each other in secret. They don't have to publicize this matter to the whole world, right? After a series of answers from Yang Chun, Gao Yu seemed to be enlightened in some aspects and pondered more things. They're using you, aren't they? Chapter 276. In the previous life, Gao Yu was a thoughtful person, otherwise she would not become the master of the fierce Yang Hall. As soon as these words came out, Yang Chun immediately knew that his master had begun to gradually consider these things. This was a good thing. Yang Chun hoped that his master would be safe, but he couldn't be with his master at all times. This meant that his master must have the ability to protect herself. Cultivation base was one thing. On the other hand, being able to accurately judge the situation was the biggest reliance for self-protection. Gao Yu began to ponder these things, which meant that her safety was more guaranteed. Damn, how can the Green Jade Immortal Island be like this? Gao Yu indignantly scolded, how can they involve my disciple in it? Because the Blue Cloud sect has a new master of the Deshang stage. These big sects, including the Green Jade Immortal Island and Taishiman's Five-Elements sect, all feel the pressure. This time, it was not Yang Chun who answered, but the head of the palace, the original balance of several major sects. Now, there's a problem. The Green Jade Immortal Island must also find a new balance point. While answering Gao Yu's complaint, the head of the palace nodded appreciatively to Yang Chun. Yang Chun's words just surprised the head of the palace and Wang Yong. A disciple who had just reached the foundation stage could analyze these small disagreements between the sects so thoroughly, it was a surprise to them. Such a clever mind, luck, and a disciple who could see the overall situation so thoroughly was simply a natural talent for sect management. At least more than 90% of the Jidan stage masters in the Chunyang Palace have not considered these issues, let alone the disciples in the foundation stage and the Qi refining stage. If such a disciple did not make great efforts to cultivate, it would be a reckless waste of resources. Yang Chun, you don't go out in the near future. Cultivate carefully. Wait for Li Qingchun to come and die. After the head of the palace answered Gao Yu's question, he turned to Yang Chun and said, wait until this matter is over. Yes, palace master. Yang Chun hurriedly bowed. This time, Gao Yu didn't ask much. Yang Chun had already said it very clearly. Whether Li Qingchun was alive or dead, he could not escape death in the end. Even some people in Taishiman hoped that he would die. In this life and death challenge, his odds of winning were really not high. Even if Li Qingchun's peak foundation stage realm was higher than Yang Chun, who told Taishiman to not want to anger Elder Wu Xiong and Elder Hua Wanting at the same time. Thinking that the Green Jade Immortal Island was also involved, Taishiman would never let the Taishiman let the Green Jade Immortal Island. The best way was to give up. The head of the palace and Wang Chun did not stay. After listening to these things, the disciple, Yang Sect Yu, Chun, master in Liang Yang Yu Chun, master in Yang Chun was Chun. Yang Chun, Li Qingchun has been targeting you. If you let him die like this, wouldn't it be too easy for him? Gao Yu now began to stand in Yang Chun's perspective to consider the problem. She knew what Li Qingchun and Chu Hong had done to Yang Chun, so she would pay particular attention to Yang Chun's attitude. Master, you don't understand this. Without the head of the palace and Wang Yong, Yang Chun spoke more casually to his master. In the past, Li Qingchun was able to persuade Chu Hong to deal with the disciple. What he relied on behind him was his identity as a disciple of Taishiman. Now, his biggest reliance wanted him to die. Is there anything more painful for him than this? Is there a more enjoyable way of revenge than the enemy coming to the door to die? Can there be a more wonderful result than this? What if he doesn't want to counterattack? Gao Yu was still a little worried. It involved Yang Chun. She was always not at ease, but this question did not wait for Yang Chun to answer. She had her own answer. Since it was the wish of the top leaders of Taishiman, a small disciple at the peak of the foundation stage, it was estimated that he would not know who did it. When she thought of the intrigue between several major sects involved, Gao couldn't help but feel a palpitation. Even the disciple of her own sect could not hesitate to give up. This was simply cruel. Is it the end of cultivation? Will it become like this? Gao suddenly said with emotion, seemingly talking to herself, but also like asking Yang Chun. Other disciples don't know. Yang Chun replied straightforwardly, but you won't. If Gao would become like this, how could she rather die to protect Yang Chun in her previous life? How do you know? Gao was puzzled by Yang Chun's quick answer, and such an affirmative answer. Even I don't know. Because you're my master, I just know. Yang Chun gave Gao an answer so casually, but he secretly added a sentence to himself in his heart. Because in your previous life, you have used your life to prove that you are not that kind of person. Then will you become such a person? Yang Chun was so sure that she would not change. Gao looked very happy and asked Yang Chun in turn. To others, maybe. Yang Chun still gave Gao an answer that made her happy. To you, master, I will never. You won't. But what if others will? Gao seemed to have fallen into a wrong way of thinking and began to drill into a dead end on this issue. To become a person that others can't give up. Yang Chun also knew that Gao was thinking nonsense. Once Gao couldn't figure it out, it was easy to create an inner demon, so he was very patient to enlighten her. Like this disciple, they can only choose to let Li Qingchen die, not to let this disciple die. Like you, find a few strong backers to rely on. Gao's eyes stared, very dissatisfied with Yang Chun's opportunistic behavior. This disciple's cultivation is low now. It's expedient. Yang Chun smiled and said, when this disciple's cultivation rises, then it will be up to us to decide who to give up or who to protect. Up to us to decide? Gao shook her head, as if she didn't realize that Yang Chun used the word us. I don't want to become such a person. Then become the kind of person that no matter what happens, others simply don't dare to think about whether to give up on you or not. Yang Chun said heroically. Yang Chun's words simply hit the bottom of Gao's heart. She was the kind of courageous character who was willing to dominate her own life instead of being controlled by others. She immediately smiled happily and said, I like this. We will become such people. As she spoke, her tone also became cheerful, as if she had untied the knot in her heart and no longer entangled in this issue. After solving a small trouble, even her state of mind had improved. After realizing this, Gao smiled even more happily. Master, don't worry. Yang Chun seemed to be responding to Gao's words, but it was more like he was swearing to himself. With this disciple here, even if something big happens, you don't need to worry about it. This disciple will bear it. Chapter 277. What Gao and Yang Chun did not see was that the master of the palace and Wang Yong, who left, stopped halfway back to the Chunyang Palace. The master of the palace directly found a place to sit on the ground and set up a restriction. Then he smiled bitterly at Wang Yong, who was next to him. Senior brother, your grand disciple really makes people speechless. Jealous? Wang Yong and the master of the palace were brothers, and they were more open in private. They were very casual when it was only the two of them. It's useless to be jealous. You don't have such good luck to receive such a good grand disciple. Also, Yang Chun's luck really makes people crazy with jealousy. The master of the palace did not hide his jealousy, but he was only jealous of Yang Chun, not Wang Yong. It's a good thing to have a great luck. Wang Yong was very protective of his own grand disciple. When he heard the naked jealousy of the master of the palace, he did not care. The master would not be jealous of Yang Chun. He is too much in the limelight. The master of the palace shook his head. The tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. After this challenge, don't let him go out for a while, lest someone harm him. It's good to stay in the sect. But what do you want him to do? Wang Yong agreed with this point very much. The performance of a genius was too good, and it had already made people secretly jealous. If there was a great luck, then maybe someone would run out one day and plot against him. Although the righteous sects were harmonious on the surface, they would not hesitate for a moment. Just like the Taishaman against the five-element sect, or this time the Green Jade Immortal Island against the Taishaman. The 5 spiritual powers have reached the foundation stage at the same time, and he is well-read and knowledgeable. It should be more than enough to guide some disciples of the outer sex, right? The master of the palace seemed to have an idea, and he smiled and said his plan. Okay, Wang Yong nodded. The disciples of the 9 Earth Mountain Villa were in the territory of the Chunyang Palace in Meiqing Mountain. Unless there was a disaster, it was impossible for others to come in and plot against them. There was no need to worry about safety. The arrangement of the head of the palace was indeed very clever. Yang Chen did not know that he had been grounded by the head of the palace and the master ancestor for a short time. After such a long period of accumulation and consolidation, the foundation establishment stage of Yin and Yang 5 elements secret had been completely consolidated, and he could try to break through to a higher stage. But before that, Yang Chen had to solve Li Qingchen's problem first. 2 months later, Yang Chen and Gao Yu appeared together on a small island in the boundary of the Green Jade Immortal Island. This island was the place where he and Li Qingchen had agreed to carry out the life and death challenge. Li Qingchen and a Jinan stage grandmaster from Taishaman also appeared here. The life and death challenge between 2 foundation establishment stage juniors was a personal grudge. It was not worth sending any high-level people, let alone experts. What was surprising was that, as the owner of the Green Jade Immortal Island, there were 2 Yuanying stage masters, plus one of the parties, Shi Shanshan Fairy Shi. Of the 2 Yuanying stage masters who were present, one was Elder Guan Yueying, who Yang Chun had dealt with before, and the other had never been seen before, but it seemed that his relationship with Li Qingchen was not ordinary. Yang Chun, I'm sorry. Before the battle began, Shi Shanshan walked to Yang Chen's side in the eyes of Li Qingchen and apologized to Yang Chen. Yang Chen now understood that Shi Shanshan was not like the kind of inhuman and simple gullible that she had always shown. This apology was clearly admitting that she had used the name of Yang Chen to deal with Li Qingchen. For the apology of the future Cold Plum Fairy, Yang Chen was very unwilling at first. If it weren't for Li Qingchen, Yang Chen would not have suffered so many difficulties in Chunyang Palace before, and there would not have been so many troubles. Yes, Yang Chen regarded those experiences as troubles, not as tempering at the critical moment of life and death. However, Yang Chen also knew that with Shi Shanshan's character of not communicating with people easily, everything seemed to be caused by Shi Shanshan's attitude towards Li Qingchen. It could only be said that Li Qingchen's unrequited love could not be completely blamed on Shi Shanshan. In the future, this kind of thing must never involve me again. The resolution of this matter also depended on the meaning of the Green Jade Immortal Island. So Yang Chen did not intend to entangle himself in this matter. He just dropped a sentence, closed his eyes, and no longer paid attention to it. When Shi Shanshan saw Yang Chen's attitude, there was a strange feeling in her heart. Since she joined the Green Jade Immortal Island and became an inner sect disciple, she has been pursued all the way. There has never been a male Taoist who treated her like Yang Chen, which made her feel very novel and more guilty at the same time. It seems that Yang Chen still did not fully understand. You have to be careful. The expression on Shi Shanshan's face did not change, and she said in a low voice, Li Qingchen is the descendant of Elder Li Junyu in my sect. He has received great guidance from Elder Li. You have to be careful in this life and death challenge. Yang Chen never knew this news. Now it seemed a bit troublesome. If this was the case, if he killed Li Qingchen, it would not be the trouble of the Taishaman, but there would be some discord between Chunyang Palace and the Green Jade Immortal Island. But at this moment, the arrow on the bowstring had to be shot. The big things could only be said after the end. No matter who was behind Li Qingchen, Yang Chen couldn't use his own life to curry favor. Li Qingchen was dead. This thing happened because of me if you fail the challenge. After Shi Shanshan said this, she bit her lip fiercely and her face turned red. Finally, she made up her mind and gritted her teeth and said, if you fail the challenge, I will keep my chastity for you. After that, Shi Shanshan didn't wait for Yang Chen to have any reaction. She turned directly and returned to the side of Elder Guan Yueying on the side of the Green Jade Immortal Island. She bowed her head and restored her cold appearance, standing quietly. There were many people who came to watch the battle, but they were a little far away. The challenge had not yet begun, and no one would probe their spiritual awareness to provoke the two Yuanying stage masters. Although the voice of Shi Shanshan's words was low, these people in the field, including the two Taishamen, the two Yuanying stage masters of the Green Jade, Immortal Island, and Gaoyu, all clearly heard this sentence of Shi Shanshan. Yang Chun was stunned on the spot. Chastity? What did that mean? For ordinary people, it was that a wife would no longer marry after the death of her husband, or never marry after the death of her fiancé. For cultivators, it was that after their own Tao companion died, they would not look for a new Tao companion. The question was, did Yang Chun and Shi Shanshan have this relationship? How could Shi Shanshan say such a thing? Boom! Yang Chun was still stunned, but Li Qingchun had already gone berserk. Before the time was up, he directly rushed up and shouted angrily at Yang Chun. Yang Chun, you die for me. Chapter 278. Not only Yang Chun and Li Qingchun, Guan Yueying and Li Junyu, the two Yuanying stage masters, and Yang Chun's master Gaoyu, were all shocked by Shi Shanshan's words and couldn't say a word. The meaning expressed by Shi Shanshan was very simple. She was not optimistic about the result of Yang Chun in this challenge. This was also very normal. Li Qingchun was at the peak foundation stage, the direct disciple of Taishamen, and with the guidance of Li Junyu, a Yuanying stage master, his cultivation base could be imagined. On the other hand, Yang Chun was just a newcomer who had just reached the foundation stage, and he was still a disciple of a second-rate sect. As early as when Yang Chun was still an executioner, Li Qingchun and Shi Shanshan had already traveled outside. Shi Shanshan didn't know how powerful Yang Chun would be in the future, but how powerful Li Qingchun was, Shi Shanshan was clear, so she had such a judgment. As Shi Shanshan said, she felt that things were caused by her, so she had to take responsibility. Guan Yueying had pointed out her problems in this regard before. If she didn't get Yang Chun's complete forgiveness, Shi Shanshan would also fall into her heart devil and be unable to extricate herself. Since Yang Chun had no hope of survival, Shi Shanshan simply kept her chastity for Yang Chun for the rest of her life, so that she could get peace in her heart. Guan Yueying was very clear about Shi Shanshan's mentality, but she did not expect that Shi Shanshan would make such a decision. Without discussing it with her, she defined herself as Yang Chun's widow. When she thought of Yang Chun's ability to easily solve her Yuanying stage elder at any time, Guan Yueying couldn't help but smile bitterly. How could Shi Shanshan, this silly child, make such a decision so easily? If Yang Chun lost, would he take the initiative to issue a life and death challenge? Li Junyu had another thought. She has long had the intention to let her descendant and Shi Shanshan form a dual cultivation Tao companion. Therefore, he had spared no effort to arrange for Li Qingchun to be by Shi Shanshan's side in order to gain her favor. At this time, Shi Shanshan actually said such words. It was simply not giving her face. In fact, Elder Li was even angrier than Li Qingchun. Shi Shanshan made it very clear that even if this challenge ended, Li Qingchun would never become Shi Shanshan's Tao companion. All these years of painstaking arrangements were wasted just like that. How could Elder Li not be enraged? Gaoyu was completely shocked, and then immediately worried. She did not expect Shi Shanshan to say such a thing. If you don't consider elderly Junyu of the Green Jade Immortal Island, then Yang Chun almost occupied the absolute upper hand in this challenge, and there would be no danger at all. But now there was suddenly a Yuanying stage master, and he was at the scene. What would happen next, there was no guarantee. In addition to worrying, Gaoyu first had a little pride. Her own apprentice was really amazing. The famous fairy Shi of the Green Jade Immortal Island even took the initiative to keep her chastity for Yang Chun. If Yang Chun did not die, wouldn't he be an excellent Tao companion? However, after being proud, Gaoyu had a little bit of anger. It seemed that what she liked was going to be taken away, and she was very uncomfortable. This feeling only appeared for a moment. Li Qingchun's roar had already sounded, and he actually didn't wait for the time of the decisive battle to arrive, and he began to attack. A sword light, like a flying swan, blasted toward Yang Chun in front of him. Despicable! Gao Yu yelled and was about to release the flying sword to resist, but suddenly felt a killing intent, forcing her to deal with it with all her strength. The killing intent came from Li Junyu of the Green Jade, Immortal Island. Discovering that Gao Yu had the intention to fight, Li Junyu directly suppressed Gao Yu's spiritual awareness. Since it was a life and death challenge between Yang Chun and Li Qingchun, others couldn't interfere at will. Yang Chun raised his head unhurriedly, and his hand were already holding the immortal beheading blade. He took a step forward against the sword light. The immortal beheading blade was raised high, and he slashed at the flying sword light. Oomph! What kind of junior is this? He can't even use the flying sword, holding a big blade in his hand to show that he has great strength. Before the result of the knife, Li Junyu, who was not far away, had already begun to ridicule. It was just talking, but when she spoke, she used her spiritual power to send the voice far away, and all the people around the battle could hear it, including Yang Chun in the field. This kind of interference with the mind was a very disgusting trick, but she used it indifferently, and she didn't care about the views of others. Even if some people felt that it was despicable, Li Junyu was a Yuanying stage elder, and this was the territory of the Green Jade Immortal Island. Who dared to say half a word? Unfortunately, some things were not transferred by the personal will of some people. No matter how good the trick was, in the face of absolute strength, it was just a joke. Ding! Along with Li Junyu's sarcastic words, there was a crisp sound and a dazzling spark. Yang Qin used a knife with both hands and accurately cut the sword body of the flying sword. The huge force of the chopping directly cut the flying sword to the ground. The flying sword controlled by spiritual awareness, compared with the immortal beheading blade controlled by Yang Chun with both hands and at the same time with spiritual awareness and physical strength, it could not occupy an advantage in any aspect. In terms of spiritual awareness, Yang Chun was already at the peak Jiedan stage, but Li Qingchun was only at the peak foundation stage, which was a big gap. In terms of strength, Yang Chen's body had been nourished by the life essence of countless immortals, and his strength had been unreasonably strong. In terms of material, the immortal beheading saber was refined by a master at the peak of Jindan realm for hundreds of years. How could the flying sword that Li Qingchun got from Li Junyu, which was only a few decades old, compare with it? In the splashing of sparks, Li Qingchun's flying sword directly appeared a huge gap, and Li Qingchun himself, because of the close connection with the flying sword, when the flying sword was damaged, his spiritual awareness was also severely damaged. His whole person stayed in place, holding his head and making a painful scream. He could no longer make other movements. Yang Chun never had the habit of sparing the enemy. After the knife was cut down, he took another big step forward. In the air, he had already raised the immortal beheading blade high again. As soon as he landed, Yang Chun was already standing 3 feet in front of Li Qingchun, and the immortal beheading blade was once again cut down mercilessly. Li Qingchun noticed the danger, and he resisted the pain of the spiritual awareness damage and launched the protection on his body. In an instant, a faintly discernible armor appeared on Li Qingchun's body, and at the same time, there was already a silver ball in Li Qingchun's hand, and there was even a smirk on his face. "Don't!" The scream sounded again, and the owner of the voice was still elderly Junyu, who had just mocked Yang Chun. However, this time the cry was full of pleading, and no one knew who she was shouting to. Chapter 279. The onlookers didn't know. Even Gao Yu and Shi Shanshan, who were close at hand, didn't know who Li Junyu was shouting at. On the scene, Yang Chun seemed to have the upper hand, and the knife was very powerful. But Li Qingchun had already launched a high-level divine armor, and he was holding a silver ball in his hand. She didn't know what kind of magic weapon it was, but it was estimated that there was still a way to fight back. No one could tell who this no was meant for. But Guan Yueying knew that Li Junyu's shout was for Yang Chun. The power of that knife, others couldn't see it, but she and Li Junyu, the 2 Yuanying stage masters, could see it. Not to mention that Li Qingchun launched the divine armor in a hurry. Even if he launched it with all his strength, he might not be able to block Yang Chen's knife. The knife that Yang Chun had just slashed on the flying sword had clearly shown the horror of Yang Chun holding the immortal beheading blade, and Li Qingchen obviously did not recognize this. Hearing Li Junyu's words, Li Qingchen instinctively thought that this was to stop him from using the ball in his hand. You must know that this was a Gung Jin Divine Thunder that Li Junyu personally refined for him. As long as it was launched, not to mention the younger generation of the foundation stage, even if it was a Yuanying stage master, he would lose half of his life. But Li Qingchen immediately realized the meaning of Li Junyu's words. He and Yang Chun were so close. Once the Gung Jin Divine Thunder was launched, the two of them would die together. There was no other result. Thinking of this, Li Qingchen hesitated. Just this, it has already determined the life and death of the two people. Yang Chen's immortal beheading blade mercilessly cut directly on the top of Li Qingchen's head. The illusory armor, like paper, was broken without a sound. Yang Chen's knife directly cut from Li Qingchen's head to the soles of his feet. When Yang Chen put away the knife and grabbed the silver ball from Li Qingchen's hand, Li Qingchen's body was divided into two pieces and fell on both sides. "Junior, how dare you?" Li Junyu couldn't believe what she saw. She had already called out to stop it. Yang Chen still made such a killing move. This was simply not putting her, a Yuanying stage master, in his eyes. She was so furious that she immediately summoned her flying sword. Junior's sister, Guan Yueying, who was next to her, frowned and shouted directly. Her voice was mixed with a divine sense shock, instantly waking up Li Junyu, who was almost going crazy. Spiritual consciousness shock. This was Guan Yueying's proudest move. Last time, she had used this move to injure Yang Chun, but this time she had used it on Li Junyu. Guan Yueying's shout immediately woke Li Junyu up. Only then did she realize what she had just done. Yang Chun and Li Qingchen were in a death match. How could Yang Chun stop at Li Junyu's command? That being said, Li Junyu was completely unable to accept the fact that Li Qingchen, who she had personally guided for several years, was killed in 2 strikes. She couldn't believe that the flying sword that she had personally refined was destroyed by Yang Chun, and the armor that she had prepared for Li Qingchen was also smashed. What made Li Junyu most unacceptable was that her descendant, Li Qingchen, was cut into 2 pieces in front of her eyes. The intense anger almost made her lose her mind, and she directly went up to kill Yang Chun, the junior, on the spot. Guan Yueying stopped Li Junyu's madness in time. She must not tolerate Li Junyu doing anything out of line. There were so many people watching here. If Li Junyu made a move, unless everyone was killed, it would definitely bring huge trouble to the Green Jade Immortal Island. There was one point that Guan Yueying completely believed that even if Li Junyu made a move, it would be impossible to do anything to Yang Chun. Yang Chun may not be able to beat Li Junyu, but when it came to running, Ten Li Junyu could not catch up with Yang Chun. This point, Guan Yueying has personally proved it. What's more, Guan Yueying was not sure that if Yang Chun was serious, Li Junyu was not her opponent. Moreover, the pattern that Yang Chun vaguely revealed, if it was true, if Li Junyu dared to make a move regardless of the rules, the Green Jade Immortal Island might face a disaster. Although she was not sure, Guan Yueying had already vaguely involved Yang Chun with the spiritual power abnormality of the Green Jade Immortal Island last time. After all, the two were too coincidental in time. After killing Li Qingchen with a knife, Yang Chun did not care about other people's views at all. He stepped forward and grabbed the Chinquin bag first and threw into his belt. The benefits should be taken first. No one stipulated that he could not collect the spoils of war in a life and death challenge. However, Yang Chun has been holding the silver ball in his hand, but his spiritual awareness was always staring at Li Junyu. As soon as the ball was in his hand, Yang Chun knew what it was. He held it because he was wary of Li Junyu. Seeing that she was stunned by Guan Yueying, he was a little relieved. The onlookers have been boiling up. A master of the peak foundation stage and a master of the early stage of the foundation stage had a life and death challenge. The process was so simple, but the result was so unexpected that people still couldn't believe what had just happened. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? How could this be? What kind of magic weapon is he holding in his hand? Fellow Taoist Li is too vulnerable, right? Countless shocked, speculated, doubtful, and puzzled voices came one after another, and no one could accept this result. Obviously, the cultivation of the peak foundation stage was high. How could he die in the hands of a junior in the early stage of the foundation stage? In this case, what was the point of everyone's hard work? A higher realm couldn't beat a lower realm. What's more, some guys who had some connections with Taishaman directly shouted out another statement. He must have used some demonic means. Otherwise, how could it be possible? Cheating? What method did he use? In the midst of the noise, everyone found one thing. The Jindan Grandmaster of the Taishaman, who accompanied Li Qingshun, didn't say a word. Just in the sound of the crowd's discussion, under everyone's surprised eyes, he went forward and put away Li Qingshun's body. Everyone's voice quieted down. Everyone watched the Jindan Grandmaster walk not far from Yang Chun, as if he wanted to say something. No one dared to speak, for fear of disturbing them. In a life and death challenge, my Taishaman disciple lost. The Jindan Grandmaster said very calmly, "This is a personal grievance between the two of you, and has nothing to do with your respective sections. My Taishaman will not bear a grudge against you for this. Fellow Taoist Yang, congratulations. Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. In a life and death challenge, there is no room for mercy." Yang Chun also cupped his hands and said, "The Taishaman really have the demeanor of a big sect, and you are responsible. I admire you." Chapter 280. Anyone could say beautiful words. In this way, he could let the Taishaman step down, so Yang Chun didn't mind saying a few more empty words. There was a change in Li Junyu, and he didn't know what would happen. The most embarrassed person now was Shi Shanshan. In her mind, Yang Chun was bound to die this time. Not to mention the realm was there, but the magic weapons that Li Junyu specially prepared for Li Qingshun were not comparable to Yang Chun, who knew that it would turn out to be this result. Because of Guan Yueying's advice, Shi Shanshan realized that the means she used to deal with Li Qingshun before were wrong, and she was very guilty of Yang Chun. Originally, Shi Shanshan planned to use the opportunity of face-to-face confrontation to restore Yang Chen's reputation, plus her own apology and sufficient compensation. Maybe she could make Yang Chun forgive her. But who knows that such a small thing turned out to be so hot in the cultivation world, and she didn't know why. Li Qingshun and Li Junyu were a family, so this matter was selectively concealed from Li Junyu by the Green Jade Immortal Island, and it was also concealed from Guan Yueying. Shi Shanshan was even less likely to know. Li Qingshun was guilty and didn't dare to confront, but he issued a challenge. What surprised Shi Shanshan was that Yang Chun actually challenged Li Qingshun to a life and death challenge. This made Shi Shanshan even more self-reproach. In the case of thinking that Yang Chun would die, she said the words of chastity. The problem was that now Yang Chun was alive and well, and Shi Shanshan had no chance to keep her chastity. But the word chastity was too ambiguous. Mortals were either to their husbands or to their fiancé, and cultivators were to their own Tao companions. How could Shi Shanshan, a woman, deal with this? In the midst of the awkwardness, Yang Chun turned to her side, which made Shi Shanshan even more ashamed and angry. Seeing that Yang Chun was getting closer and closer, Shi Shanshan felt her heart beating faster and faster. She wanted to say something, but couldn't. She was extremely anxious. "Very sure, don't mention such jokes in the future." However, Yang Chun smiled at Shi Shanshan and did not take the opportunity to force her. He just cupped his hands and said calmly, "As I said, don't involve me in such matters in the future. Thank you very much." After that, Yang Chun, regardless of Shi Shanshan's reaction, turned directly and walked towards his master Gao Yu. Shi Shanshan's face alternated between red and white for a while. Seeing that Yang Chun had walked to Gao Yu's side, she didn't know why she felt uncomfortable. Suddenly, she shouted, "Although Shi Shanshan is a woman, I will keep my word. Things started because of me, and I will not escape. I will never take back what I said." After shouting, Shi Shanshan did not care about the two Yuanying stage seniors of the Green Jade Immortal Island. Without saying anything, She directly summoned the flying sword and flew away from the island, flying towards the sect of the Green Jade, Immortal Island, leaving a lot of onlookers looking at each other. They didn't know what happened. Yang Chen's figure almost fell to the ground. What did Shi Shanshan mean by this? Or did she admit that he was her Tao companion? The onlookers didn't hear the words of Shi Shanshan at first, but Guan Yueying, Li Junyu, Gao Yu, Yang Chun, and the Jidan stage master of the Taishaman understood. Shi Shanshan made such a scene, but the Jidan stage master of the Taishaman seemed to be somewhat gloating. He once again smiled at Yang Chun and said, "Fairy Shi is unparalleled. Fellow Taoist Yang, congratulations." After congratulating Yang Chun, the Jidan stage master apologized to Gao Yu, Guan Yueying, and Li Junyu, and then directly left with his sword. When the onlookers saw that there was no big excitement, they also discussed the battle that was not very exciting and quickly dispersed. On the island, only Yang Chun and Gao Yu, as well as Guan Yueying and Li Junyu, the two Yuanying stage masters, were left. Senior Guan, Yang Chun knew that things had to be resolved, otherwise there would be more and more troubles in the future. He could only greet Guan Yueying, who he was still familiar with, and said, "Fairy Shi is just joking. Don't take it seriously. Senior, please persuade Fairy Shi." Just speaking of this, Yang Chen's words were interrupted by Guan Yueying. The words are said are like water that has been poured out. The disciples of my Green Jade, Immortal Island, have never said it in front of so many people. Fellow Taoist Yang, you have a great future. Shanshan will not disgrace you, right? In the face of Yang Chun, Guan Yueying couldn't boast about his high cultivation base. She only used a promising future, but it was also a test. The excuse was that the disciples of the Green Jade Immortal Island were the most committed, but Guan Yueying still had some selfishness. If this matter made Yang Chun have any bad ideas about the Green Jade Immortal Island, it would be a big trouble. On the contrary, there was a promise from Shi Shanshan. Maybe Yang Chun and Shi Shanshan could be brought together. In this way, Shi Shanshan had said it first, and no one would force her to become a Tao companion in the future, solving a big trouble. On the other hand, if Yang Chun was really like what she guessed, it was really worthy of a promising future. For Shi Shanshan and the Green Jade Immortal Island, there is only good and no harm. As for Yang Chun, it must be known that the beauty of Shi Shanshan was well known in the world. Otherwise, no one would have begun to call the name of the Cold Plum Fairy. This younger generation disciple of hers, whether it was the appearance or the cultivation aptitude, was a superior person, and she was from a famous sect. She was definitely worthy of Yang Chun. Yang Chun didn't expect Guan Yueying to say this. He opened his mouth and couldn't say anything more. Since fellow Taoist Gao is the master of Yang Chun, then I will trouble fellow Taoist Gao to persuade Yang Chun. Guan Yueying turned to Gao Yu's side. Let's each report to the head of the sect, and let them choose the next auspicious day to determine the status of Yang Chun and Shanshan. How about it? This. Gao Yu was also confused. She didn't know how things developed like this. She was a little surprised that she was suddenly asked to make a decision. If this matter is difficult to do, fellow Taoist Gao doesn't have to be embarrassed. Guan Yueying knew that everything had to be done by Yang Chun. She nodded and continued, "However, I, the disciple of the Green Jade Immortal Island, will never break my promise. Yang Chun, if you don't want to, we won't force it, but Shanshan will not find another Tao companion and will keep her chastity for you in this life. You're on your own." After that, she didn't wait for Yang Chen's reply. She just sighed, "Ai, Shanshan has a bitter life." After sighing, she pulled Li Junyu, who was looking at Yang Chun with resentment, and quickly disappeared. No way. Yang Chen's brows were almost tangled. Was there no one who wanted the Cold Plum Fairy? It was estimated that the people in line could line up from the Green Jade Immortal Island to Qinyang Palace, right? How could she rely on him? Only Yang Chun and Gao Yu were left on the island. Yang Chun turned his face and looked at Gao Yu. Gao Yu also looked over. The master and apprentice looked at each other and looked at each other. Chapter 281. In any case, Yang Chun won. Winning the life and death challenge of Taishaman Li Qingchen was more important than anything else. At least in Gao Yu's mind. A life and death challenge was not a joke. Generally speaking, only one could survive. If Yang Chun survived, then all the troubles before and after would not be a big trouble. As long as people were alive, there was still a chance. Fairy Sure is cold and elegant. Your luck with women is not shallow. After easing the nervous mood, Gao Yu suddenly said to Yang Chun with a smile, and there was an obvious ridicule in her eyes, "You are also a genius Jiadan stage master. After the double cultivation, your cultivation will definitely advance by leaps and bounds." AI. Yang Chen couldn't help but give his master a white look. At this time, he was still gloating about his master. He was really speechless. Finally, he could only sigh. Li Qingchun is the descendant of elder Li Junyu of the Green Jade Immortal Island. I don't know what trouble there will be in the future. At least you are alive, aren't you? From this point of view, Gao Yu was much happier than Yang Chun, and Yang Chun seemed to have no joy of winning after a life and death challenge with a peak foundation stage master. Yang Chen's victory seemed to be very simple, but Gao Yu saw one thing. That was, Yang Chun did not seem to have a flying sword that could be used. There was only a strange-shaped knife in his hand that he had since he started his cultivation, as if he was afraid that others did not know that he was an executioner. Gao Yu made up her mind. When she went back this time, she would immediately collect the best materials and build the best flying sword for Yang Chun. No matter what, he was also her own apprentice, and Gao Yu was still focused on refining. Her own apprentice did not have a good flying sword. How could it be justified? What's more, the palace master had personally promised to give Yang Chun a good flying sword. However, Gao Yu couldn't be blamed. Gao Yu had been thinking about giving Yang Chun the most suitable flying sword. Since she took over this task, she had been racking her brains, but she was still unable to determine what kind of flying sword Yang Chun needed. From the looks of it, the most suitable flying sword didn't have to be given immediately, but a flying sword that could defend and fight was necessary. Although he was happy, no one would be so happy to suddenly have a dual cultivation companion. No matter how beautiful the dual cultivation companion was, no one would be so happy. Especially when Yang Chun thought of the cold expression of the future winter plum fairy. Even if they were together, it would be like leaning against a block of ice, and he would lose interest in anything. This matter must be made clear to the Green Jade Immortal Island. It's just a misunderstanding. There is no need to take it seriously. Yang Chun shook his head and still felt that it was better to push it away. Otherwise, there would be a Li Qingchun appearing today. When the Winter Plum Fairy really showed her monstrous cultivation, he didn't know what kind of people would jump out. That would be the real trouble. Yang Chun was no longer the kind of person who didn't know what was going on when he got the favor of a beautiful woman, so he knew how to deal with it rationally. Seeing that Yang Chun seemed to be very insistent, as the master of Yang Chun, Gao Yu also seemed to agree with Yang Chen's decision. She didn't know why, when she heard Yang Chen's decision. Gao Yu even had a relaxed feeling. However, how to deal with it? Chunyang Palace still needed to negotiate with the Green Jade Immortal Island. After all, the other party had 2 Yuanying stage ancestors and a Jidan stage master. Gao Yu and Yang Chun added up, it seemed that their status was not so equal. Back at Chunyang Palace, the two did not dare to neglect and directly went to report to the head of the palace. If it was really the Taishaman who gave up Li Qingchun, it would be simple. This matter would be over with the death of Li Qingchun, and there would be no more twists and turns. But if an elder of the Green Jade Immortal Island remembered it, it would be a bit troublesome. It doesn't matter. Let's take one step at a time. What surprised the two was that the head of the palace was unexpectedly open-minded about this matter. He waved his hand as if nothing had happened. No matter how troublesome it is, I can't use the life of my Chunyang Palace disciple to please others, right? In one sentence, it seemed that Yang Chun and Gao Yu's hearts were very warm. After all, he was the person who became the head of the sect, and it was easy to let the disciples feel the protection of the sect. The matter of the dual cultivation companion, we will negotiate. The head of the palace continued, but he immediately came to a big turn. Yang Chun, Fairy Sure is indeed an excellent dual cultivation companion. You might as well consider it. In this regard, Yang Chun could only shake his head, such a forced cultivation companion, Yang Chun did not like it. Fortunately, the head of the palace did not force it, and turned to talk about the arrangement of Yang Chun. Yang Chun, during this time, don't go out and run around. After the head of the palace comforted the two, he directly began to assign work to Yang Chun. Since you said that the tribulation is about to begin, you should calm down and stay in the Chunyang Palace for a while. I have discussed it with senior brother Wang Yong. The Nine Earth Mountain Villa has recently lost a suitable disciple, Yang Chun. Go and guide the younger generation. For the arrangement of the head of the palace, Yang Chun had nothing to say. There was no other way but to do it. Moreover, it was indeed time for him to calm down and improve his cultivation base. Of course, Gaiyu was also happy. At least Yang Chun didn't have to run around so dangerous. The Nine Earth Mountain Villa was in the territory of the Chunyang Palace. Which enemy dared to behave atrociously here? You are honest in the Nine Earth Mountain Villa. Gaiyu carefully told Yang Chun. I will go to Rui Lane in the near future and find a few materials for you to refine a flying sword. Don't make trouble again. For Yang Chun's ability to cause trouble, Gaiyu never doubted that it would be inferior to his ability to make friends with the big shots. Therefore, it was essential to give Yang Chun some advice before leaving. Yang Chun suddenly looked forward to it. This time, it was estimated that Gaiyu would officially start refining the Bright Ray sword. That was one of the few warm scenes in the memory of his previous life that he could not forget before he died. In the face of Gaoyu's advice, Yang Chun just nodded his head heavily, and then went straight to the Nine Earth Mountain Villa without saying anything. Wasn't it just passing on the power? He could just see if he could find a few future genius babies. Li Qingxin's life and death challenge was not too big a challenge for Yang Chun. What he had to consider now was the next demonic tribulation that almost swept the entire cultivation world. If the demonic tribulation was just to avoid it, it would be simple as long as he didn't touch the dragon embryo spirit cultivation secret art. However, Yang Chun thought further. In the subsequent encirclement and suppression of the devil, the Chunyang Palace would definitely participate. At that time, how to avoid heavy losses was the problem that Yang Chun was worried about. It seemed that killing Lin Changhe in advance might be a good idea. Chapter 282. Lin Changhe, the devil, directly rushed to the realm of the Deshang stage because of the dragon embryo spirit cultivation secret art. In the end, the cultivation world sacrificed dozens of Yuanying stage masters to kill Lin Changhe. But the major sects also suffered a great loss of vitality and had to lie dormant for decades to recuperate before they began to slowly recover. Yang Chun would never let the last tragedy repeat in Chunyang Palace. It was necessary to make some preparations in advance. Moreover, there had been great changes between this life and his previous life. Yang Chun did not know how much impact this demonic cultivation tribulation would have. During the demonic cultivation tribulation in his previous life, Elder Hua Wanting of the Blue Cloud sect was still entangled by the blood demon vine and could do nothing about Lin Changhe's rampage. But now, with the early intervention of Yang Chun, Elder Hua has successfully got rid of the blood demon vine and entered the Deshang stage. If Elder Hua made a move, what would happen to Lin Changhe? Yang Chun did not know. Everything was unknown, but for Yang Chun, the safest thing was to improve his own strength. Unfortunately, at this time, the foundation stage was really not enough. Even if it was a Jiedan stage master, in the face of Lin Changhe, who had already been possessed by the devil, it was just a dish. It was really nothing. Even if there were still a few years before the eruption of the demonic cultivation tribulation, even if Yang Chun knew countless heavenly materials and earthly treasures, it was impossible to compete with Lin Changhe in just a few years. If he wanted to have the power to protect himself in this demonic cultivation tribulation, one was to rely on the power of the sect to maintain the strength of the sect as much as possible, and the second was to have a magic weapon that could play a role at a critical moment. After the battle with Li Qingxun, Yang Chun knew that the refining of a life source magic weapon had been put on the agenda. Before, because he had just built the foundation and consolidated his realm, Yang Chun did not want to be distracted by refining the magic weapon. Now that his realm had been consolidated, he naturally had to start refining. The choice of the life source magic weapon was an important thing for every cultivator. This was because one's life treasure was closely linked to one's life. If the treasure was heavily damaged, the owner would also be heavily injured. However, natal magic treasures were more connected to their masters than ordinary magic treasures. The power they could display was at least several times that of ordinary magic treasures. In fact, Yang Chun had already made his choice. The reason why he had been carrying the Immortal beheading saber was because he wanted to treat it as his natal flying sword. The main body of the beheading Immortal saber was actually a sword case refined by that Jindan Sr. The sword case itself was not outstanding, but if a strong enough sword soul was added, it could achieve a qualitative leap. As for the sword soul, Yang Chun already had an idea. If the great Yin-Yang 5 elemental incantations corresponding 10 types of flying sword were all gathered, the Immortal beheading saber would become a terrifying magic treasure that would make even the heavenly court tremble. It wasn't easy to gather the 10 attributes of the flying sword, but Yang Chun already had 2 of them. One was the Punlai divine wood, and the other was the blood demon vine. Coincidentally, both were of the wood attribute. With Yang Chun's current strength in the early stage of the foundation stage, it was impossible to refine the Punlai divine wood. By relying on the earth core fire in his body, even the shape of the Punlai divine wood could not be changed. If the blood demon vine was in a mature state, Yang Chun would be helpless. But coincidentally, the blood demon vine that Yang Chun collected was just a young blood demon vine that had absorbed the flesh and blood of a master of the Deshang stage in this world, just enough for Yang Chun to display his strengths. Because of the characteristics of the blood demon vine, it also led to the refining of the second wood attribute flying sword, with a strong blood-sucking characteristic, and it could grow with the absorption of the flesh and blood of the strong, until it absorbed the flesh and blood of the earth immortal in the spiritual world. It really entered the mature stage. Each sword soul could be added independently. What Yang Chun had to do now was to first add the flying sword refined by the blood demon vine into the sword sheath as the first sword soul, and then step up the quenching of the Immortal beheading blade as his own life source flying sword. Of course, the quenching of the life source flying sword was a long-term and uninterrupted effort. What Yang Chun had to do now was to first become a disciple of the Nine Earth Mountain Villa. Once again coming to the Nine Earth Mountain Villa, the disciples of the Nine Earth Mountain Villa were no strangers to Yang Chun. Not to mention, the name of the Heaven Stairway to the top and the luxurious configuration of the Fierce Sun Courtyard. There were few people in the Chunyang Palace who did not know Yang Chun. Not to mention the powerful name of refining the heaven-seizing pill and the recent faint blue cloud sect Elder Hua's favor. It was difficult not to know. What made the outer sect disciples pleasantly surprised was that Yang Chun, who was known to have memorized the entire Nine Earth Mountain Villa's scripture depository, had become their disciple. No one was more familiar with the scripture depository than Yang Chun, right? Perhaps it could save them a great deal of time, as long as they could get the specific location and name of the thing they needed from Yang Chun's mouth. The fact was as expected by the outer sect disciples. The arrival of Yang Chun had indeed made a huge change in the Nine Earth Villa. In the past, when Chu Hong was here, he didn't do his best to teach these disciples, or it could be said that most of his time was spent on his own cultivation, and he would only take out a small part of his time to instruct the outer sect disciples. Furthermore, Chu Hong had a fatal flaw. He possessed a water-attributed spiritual root and cultivated water-attributed cultivation techniques. He wasn't able to give pointers to other elemental cultivation techniques as easily as he did in the past. Yang Chun was different. Yang Chun was originally an expert in the Yin-Yang 5-element secret art. No matter what type of cultivation method it was, Yang Chun could give them accurate and concise instructions. Although it was only a few words, it was enough to enlighten the person who was being guided, giving them a new understanding of their own cultivation. This water attribute cultivation method of yours has to be gentle in order to bring out its greatest effect. When you have time, go to the scripture depository and take a look at the third jade slip on the 4th floor of the 6th row. It should be of help to you. The most important thing about the metal attribute is the word sharp. It is invincible. grasp this essence, and you will be able to solve your current problem. On the first day, Yang Chun arrived. He answered all the questions of the outer sect disciples. Yang Chun had each person ask a question, demonstrate their cultivation method, and then immediately give the most suitable solution. With hundreds of outer sect disciples, Yang Chun only used one day to give each of them a pertinent suggestion. Some of these people had good comprehension and had a breakthrough on the spot, which surprised and delighted many of the outer sect disciples. In the end, no one was willing to leave. They all wanted to listen to the explanations given by others, and maybe they could comprehend more by analogy. Oh yes, there's a problem with your cultivation method. The spiritual power can't always circulate in this meridian. After dealing with the outer sect disciples, everyone was about to leave when Yang Chun suddenly pointed to a servant who came with an outer sect disciple and said, "Solve this, and you can enter the next level." Are you talking about me? The servant who was pointed at by Yang Chun never thought that there would be such a good thing. He was stunned on the spot and pointed to his nose. Chapter 283. Yes, it's you. Yang Chun nodded and smiled at the servant. You already have the strength of the 7th level of Qi condensation. If you can advance a few more levels, you have a chance of entering the inner sect. When these words came out, the servants who had come with the outer sect disciples to listen and immediately became excited. However, they still remembered their status and didn't dare to overstep it. They only looked at Yang Chun with hopeful eyes. In the future, anyone in 9 Earth Villa, including Elegant Post Villa, can bring up any questions to me. Yang Chun said seriously, "Every 2 months, I will stay in 9 Earth Villa and Elegant Post Villa for 1 day each to guide everyone. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask." Boom! The entire crowd was in an uproar. Didn't what Yang Chun said mean that even the servants could receive guidance? This was something that none of the previous cultivation imparting disciples had ever done. Within the Ishio Villa and the 9 Earth Villa, compared with the formal outer sect disciples, the number of slaves was almost several times more. It was just that everyone had no chance before. Now that Yang Chun personally promised to give advice, everyone was overjoyed. When cultivators chose suitable disciples, they used an extremely cruel method. In the beginning, they relied on comprehension and luck. If they succeeded, they would be outer sect disciples. If they failed, they would be servants. It was the same even for outer sect disciples. There was no fairness to speak of here. It could only be said that they relied on fate. Those who had fate could meet a suitable cultivation imparting disciple and naturally succeed in reaching foundation establishment. Those who didn't could not be forced. Cultivation imparting disciples changed every few years. For these outer sect disciples, there would always be a suitable opportunity to meet a cultivation imparting disciple that suited their cultivation attribute. The only difference was the timing. Yang Chun was unlucky. He just happened to meet Chu Hong from the beginning, making things difficult for him at every turn. In the past, the cultivation imparting disciples all specialized in one element and could only give slight guidance to the other elements. There had never been someone like Yang Chun who was proficient in all 5 elements. It could also be said that this was the fate of this batch of outer sect disciples. With Yang Chun's promise, the huge number of slaves started to get excited. With the guidance of the training tutor disciple, they might be able to see the hope of building their foundation. If anyone needs to refine any elixirs, you can find the ingredients yourself, and I can refine them for you. After the previous promise of guidance, Yang Chun once again gave everyone an even more surprising promise. Everyone knew that Yang Chun was also an alchemist and had already successfully refined a 2nd-grade building foundation dam. Once he could find enough materials, Yang Chun could refine a 2nd-grade building foundation dam. At that time, wouldn't there be a great hope for him to reach the foundation building realm? The entire 9 Earth Mountain Villa and Elegant Post Villa were in an uproar. It was as if everyone saw the hope of foundation establishment. Even those who had long since given up hope had a little more vigor in their eyes. Everyone thought of a possibility. Back then, Shangwan Feng and Wang Yuan seemed to have no hope, so they went to Elegant Post Villa to be the chief steward. At this moment, they all went to Fierce Sun Courtyard with Yang Chun. No one would believe that their foundation establishment had nothing to do with Yangchun. The outer sect of Chunyang Palace seemed to have suddenly appeared a brand new atmosphere. Almost everyone burst out with a different state. Whether it was cultivation or other things, it was very different from before. Many slaves began to think about what questions they should use the next time they asked Yangchun. Most of the outer sect disciples who had received guidance from Yangchun began to try a brand new cultivation. When it was once again the day of Yangchun's guidance, everyone was notified at the last minute. This time, Yangchun planned to get to the bottom of everyone's cultivation, so it would take a bit longer. Furthermore, everyone had to be personally tested by Yangchun. No one would be dissatisfied. Yangchun was personally inspecting everyone. This was a good thing that they couldn't even beg for. So who would object? They all waited with confidence, waiting for the 9 Earth Mountain Village chief steward to call people one by one according to the name list. Of course, when calling people, even their servants could go over and give pointers at the same time. What surprised everyone was that when they came to Yangchun's side this time, other than carefully letting Yangchun inspect their cultivation, there was another small step. They would place their hands on a small stone in Yangchun's hand and output spirit power. No one knew what this was for, but no one would ask. Everyone thought that this was Yangchun testing their spirit power cultivation, so they did their best to output spirit power. This time, everyone benefited greatly from the detailed guidance that was similar to a large inspection. As long as they could ask about the mistakes in their previous cultivation, the direction of their future cultivation, and even some flaws in their application, Yangchun could give a detailed answer and even demonstrate on the spot. His valiant performance made all the disciples and servants wholeheartedly convinced. Of course, there were few exceptions. However, they weren't surprised by Yangchun's attitude, but by Yangchun telling them to directly change to a spirit power attribute cultivation method. Martial uncle, I have an earth spirit root. Why do you want me to cultivate a wood attribute cultivation method? The first person they met was an outer sect disciple who was already at the 5th layer of chi refinement. When he heard Yangchun's guidance, he didn't dare believe his ears. I can't explain it to you right now, but I can give you a promise. Yangchun didn't give the disciple a detailed explanation. He only used his status as a guiding disciple to ask the outer sect disciple to change to a cultivation method of an attribute. I can guarantee that it will be easier for you to cultivate a wood attribute cultivation method than it is now. Also, when your wood attribute cultivation reaches the peak of chi refinement, I can give you a 3rd cycle foundation establishment pill. Yangchun couldn't explain the matter of acquired spirit roots, at least not at this time. He could only forcefully suppress it and promise great benefits at the same time. Although the disciple was a bit skeptical, he couldn't resist the temptation of the 3rd cycle foundation establishment pill. Finally, after promising not to tell anyone else, he nodded his head heavily. Among the thousands of disciples and servants in Ishio Villa and 9 Earth Villa, there were 14 of them. Not everyone's innate and acquired spirit roots did match. Most of them were the same. Some acquired spiritual roots were not as outstanding as innate spiritual roots, which were very rare. This ratio was basically normal. After almost 2 months, Yangchun finally finished teaching all the disciples. Yangchun spared no effort in teaching every disciple and servant. For at least half a year, as long as these people cultivated according to his instructions, there wouldn't be any major problems. Chapter 284. This also gave Yangchun enough time to get busy with his own things. The first thing Yangchun did was the sacrificial refining of the life flying sword. The sacrificial refining of the life flying sword was very different from the ordinary flying sword. The life flying sword had to be kept in the sea of consciousness and slowly integrated with one's own primordial spirit until they were indistinguishable. The ordinary sacrificial refining of the flying sword could only upgrade the level of the life flying sword, but it could not be connected to the life. The immortal beheading blade, whose body was a sword case, was taken into the sea of consciousness by Yangchun for a full 2 months. As soon as he entered the sea of consciousness, Yangchun saw the immortal beheading blade that had been enlarged countless times. This scene was the same as when Yang Chun refined the Wood Attribute 3 Grades Foundation Establishment pill, but this time, not only the body, but even the body of the Immortal Beheading Blade entered the sea of consciousness. The enlarged Immortal Beheading Blade allowed Yang Chun to clearly see some shortcomings and flaws in the refining process of the sword case. Unfortunately, with Yang Chun's current skills, it was still impossible to improve the sword case refined by a master of the peak Jidon stage. He could only remember the flaws, and then find materials that could be improved and prepare in advance. To temper the life-flying sword, Yang Chun would naturally choose the Scarlet River. This was Yang Chun's proudest and sharpest weapon. If the flying sword could carry such killing intent, it would be almost invincible. Without thinking about it, Yang Chun threw the body of the Immortal Beheading Blade directly into the Scarlet River. The tempering of the intrinsic flying sword needed to be carried out at all times, especially in the beginning. One had to be patient enough to fuse with the flying sword. Only then would one be able to control the flying sword as though it was their own arm. If it was just a spiritual awareness mark or a few ordinary sacrificial refining, such as the Heavenly Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art and Earth Fiend Sacrificial Formation Secret Art, it could at most guarantee that the flying sword would recognize its master, and it could not be compared with the natal flying sword. Under normal circumstances, very few people would truly refine their natal magic treasures in the Foundation Establishment or Golden Core stage. Firstly, his cultivation was still shallow. Secondly, at this level, there really wasn't any good magic treasure that was worth cultivating as a lifebound magic treasure. Everyone waited until the nascent soul realm to carefully refine a high-level magic weapon as their own life source magic weapon to cultivate and temper. Before that, there was a compromise between a true natal magic treasure and an ordinary magic treasure, and that was to refine a quasi-natal magic treasure. Its power was greater than an ordinary magic treasure, but it was not as strong as a true natal magic treasure. Because it was a compromise, the quenching did not need to consume too much energy. Of course, the magic treasure itself could not be so advanced. Naturally, the degree of integration with the spiritual awareness would not be as close as that of a true natal magic treasure. However, even if it was a quasi-natal magic treasure, when it was seriously damaged, it would cause the owner's spiritual awareness to be damaged. Before, Yang Chun had killed Chu Hong, Li Qingshun, and others. The so-called natal magic treasure was this kind of quasi-natal magic treasure. Yang Chun was not willing to waste his energy on an excessive magic treasure. Even if Yang Chun went from the Foundation Establishment to the Golden Core stage and then to the Yuanying stage without any twists and turns, it would take at least hundreds of years. And these hundreds of years were enough for Yang Chun to refine his real natal magic treasure at least a few grades. No one would use a magic treasure that could not be upgraded and refined as a natal magic treasure. Yang Chun was the same. The sword scabbard itself was a magic treasure that could be upgraded. If it was integrated with the sword soul, the power would be unimaginable to Yang Chun. For such an important thing, Yang Chun certainly had to be cautious. Although there was no Yuanying stage cultivation base, the real integration of the natal magic treasure and oneself still depended on the spiritual awareness. To complete the most basic spiritual awareness tempering, Yang Chun needed to immerse the sword scabbard in the bloody river in his sea of consciousness for decades to be able to complete the initial completion. This also meant that the bloody river in Yang Chun's sea of consciousness, in these decades, if there was no accident, it would not be able to use the power of the bloody river to attack. Unless the enemy's attack was like Wan Qian and the others, and took the initiative to enter Yang Chun's sea of consciousness. The last attack by Wan Qian and her disciples made Yang Chun realize that since his rebirth, he had neglected a lot of aspects, especially in terms of vigilance. He always thought that by virtue of having a bloody river that no one in this world could match, he did not put anyone in his eyes. This was a very dangerous thing. Not to mention Wan Qian, under Guan Yueying's last shout. If Guan Yueying was not holding a little punishment at that time, but the mentality of killing, Yang Chun might have been killed in a face-to-face encounter. Or would he have the opportunity to control Guan Yueying later? It was one thing to be vigilant, but it was another thing to completely stop relying on it first, and then let himself form that kind of instinctive reaction. Yang Chen would rather start to develop this habit when facing those possible low-level enemies from now on, than think of sharpening his spear when facing a powerful enemy after ascending. While losing his dependence, he could also refine his natal magic treasure. Such an opportunity to kill two birds with one stone, Yang Chen would not miss it. While giving up his ultimate dependence, it also meant that Yang Chen must have a new life-saving means. It just so happened that the blood demon vine provided this convenience. The powerful demon vine that could trap Elder Hua wanting for hundreds of years could at least give Yang Chen a glimmer of life when facing a strong enemy. Below the Yuanying stage, as long as Yang Chen could be vigilant in time, he could have a chance to escape. As for the more powerful masters, if the real master of the Deshang stage wanted to kill Yang Chen, even if Yang Chen had the Bloody River, it would be useless. Yang Chen could not always be ready to erupt the Bloody River to deter the world. Who knows when someone could make Yang Chen disappear with a blow? Yang Chen was also looking forward to it now. How powerful would the flying sword tempered by the sea of consciousness cultivated by the three purities secret art and the killing intent of the immortal beheading stage be? Of course, with a spiritual object like the blood demon vine, Yang Chen would never waste it. During his time as a disciple, Yang Chen could refine the main vine and a small section of the main root of the blood demon vine into a sword embryo of the second wood flying sword. This flying sword, made of the sword embryo, would be one of the sword souls of the immortal beheading blade. The powerful blood-sucking ability of the blood demon vine would become the biggest feature of this flying sword and the most frightening power. When this flying sword was formed, the immortal beheading blade would have a terrifying ability that even the masters of the Yuanying stage and Deshang stage would be intimidated. If he could kill a few earth immortals and absorb their flesh and blood after ascending to the spiritual world, the flying sword would grow into a terrifying weapon that would shock even the immortals. Chapter 285. The last time Yang Chen planted the Punlai vine wood in the medicine garden, the space of the medicine garden even underwent tremendous changes. But after planting the blood phantom vine, there was no obvious change, which made Yang Chen confused for a while. But later, Yang Chen understood that the original bottle medicine garden was mostly planted with herbaceous second-wood plants. It was the world of second-wood species. Even if it was a second-wood species divine object, it would not cause a qualitative change for the time being. However, with the blood phantom vine, Yang Chen's bottle medicine garden was as safe as Mount Tai even without the protection of the dome sword formation. Before knowing how to deal with the blood phantom vine, no one could break into the medicine garden and be safe and sound. Planting the blood phantom vine was equivalent to having a natural bodyguard. Even if it was Yang Chen, if he wanted to enter the medicine garden now, he had to be prepared to prevent being hurt by the blood phantom vine. With the characteristics of the blood phantom vine, even the Chinquan bag could not trap it. If Yang Chen didn't use the right method to trap it in the scope of the medicine garden, maybe the blood phantom vine would have already rushed out of the medicine garden and killed in Chunyang Palace. The only thing that made Yang Chen regret was that it was too difficult for the blood phantom vine to upgrade, and the blood of non-masters could not be used. Fortunately, now his blood phantom vine has tasted the blood of a quasi-Deshang stage master for hundreds of years. Although it is not yet mature, it has barely passed the most vulnerable period of the juvenile period, enough to protect itself in this world. However, if this blood phantom vine wanted to upgrade again, it must suck the blood of a master with a higher cultivation base than Elder Hua wanting at the time. That meant that there must be a master of the Deshang stage whose blood was sucked by the blood phantom vine. Now, Yang Chen did not expect the blood phantom vine to be able to upgrade at all. Carefully entering the medicine garden, Yang Chen walked to the side of the blood phantom vine plant and began to prepare to refine the blood phantom vine. This refining was not to directly turn the blood phantom vine into a flying sword, but to mark the blood phantom vine with Yang Chen's spiritual awareness imprint, so that the blood phantom vine recognized Yang Chen as its master, no longer shoot at Yang Chun, and from then on obey Yang Chen's orders. The refinement process was done very carefully. Even Yang Chun was well prepared. The blood demon vine itself was highly toxic. Yang Chun controlled the medicine garden to temporarily seal this area, so that the poison would not affect other medicinal materials in the medicine garden. He even smeared the antidote all over his body before approaching, as if he was treading on thin ice. It was impossible to refine the blood demon vine without contact. Under normal circumstances, with Yang Chen's early foundation stage cultivation base, as soon as he touched it, he would immediately be sucked into a human by the blood demon vine. Yang Chun had to rely on the methods he knew to deal with the blood demon vine in his previous life. He smeared a thick layer of the medicine to restrain the blood demon vine on his hands and became like a glove before he dared to touch it. Because of the restraint of Yang Chen's medicine, the blood demon vine looked very dispirited. This also made it easier for Yang Chun to subdue it. The powerful spiritual awareness instantly passed through the vines of the blood demon vine and rushed into the plant of the blood demon vine. Suddenly, in Yang Chen's sea of consciousness, there was a shadow of a ferocious blood demon vine. The blood-colored vine was like a living poisonous snake, raging wildly in Yang Chen's sea of consciousness. Unfortunately, in Yang Chen's sea of consciousness, in addition to the bloody river, there was the shadow of the Punlai Divine Wood, the Sun True Fire and the Earth Core Fire, plus the bridge built by the fifth Earth Layer and the Green Ox Horns. These things, no matter which one was taken out, it was impossible for the Blood Demon Vine to hurt it. No matter how crazy the vines of the Blood Demon Vine were, as long as it touched anything in the sea of consciousness, it would be ejected. Soon, the blood-colored vine found that the towering giant Punlai Divine would had no harm at all when it entangled it, but when it touched the Sun True Fire and the Earth Core Fire, it would be hurt. The only acceptable thing seemed to be the fifth Earth Layer. The fifth Earth Layer was the favorite place for wood-attributed plants to take root. The phantom of the blood demon vine soon discovered this, and quickly put its roots in the fifth Earth Layer, and then began to try to attack the huge Oxhorn Bridge. Yang Chun has been controlling everything in the sea of consciousness and observing everything. The blood demon vine wrapped the horns, but found that the two horns were empty. There was no blood for it to suck at all. In the end, the blood demon vine concentrated all the vines in the bloody river. The bloody river was also the closest thing to blood, but it was the most instinctive thing for the blood demon vine. At the last step, the blood demon vine, who did not give up, directly controlled a small vine into the blood river. The phantom of the blood demon vine in the sea of consciousness, at the moment when the vines touched the blood river, suddenly all withered, trembled violently, and almost broke. The vine could not be pulled out of the blood river in any case. The violent trembling lasted for a while, and Yang Chun felt a strong will to subdue. With a move of his mind, the blood river immediately released the vines, and the phantom of the blood demon vine instantly retracted the vines, and the plant shrank into a ball and did not dare to move. Yang Chen's spiritual awareness directly penetrated into the phantom, and then, with a slight move, the vines of the blood demon vine began to wave wildly in the sea of consciousness. Everything was as Yang Chen's will, and finally, under the control of Yang Chun, the blood demon vine wrapped the vines around the main trunk of the Punlai Divine Wood. The combination of yin and yang was the right way. At this step, Yang Chun opened his eyes. The blood demon vine in front of him already had an inexplicable sense of intimacy. Yang Chun tried to move his mind, and a vine immediately popped out like a snake and lightly circled around Yang Chun, but it never touched Yang Chun. At this point, Yang Chun was considered to have subdued the blood demon vine, walked out of the medicine garden, pinched his fingers. Everything in his sea of consciousness was almost only a matter of time, but outside it has been a full 2 months. It seemed that the timing was just right, and it coincided with the time of the guidance arranged by Yang Chun. Fortunately, Yang Chen's guidance was adequate last time, and before that, Yang Chun had been to the Nine Earth Villa and the Ishio Villa once, so there were not too many people who needed guidance. This time, After Yang Chun routinely gave guidance to the disciples, he was idle again. Speaking of which, Yang Chun, the training disciple, was the most relaxed one among the previous training disciples. His detailed guidance directly allowed those who had a foundation to cultivate to not worry about encountering bigger problems for at least half a year or even a year. Relatively speaking, it seemed that Yang Chun, the training disciple, was a bit idle. However, this was exactly the effect that Yang Chun wanted. Passing on power was passing on power, but his own cultivation could not fall behind. The current state was the most ideal state. Chapter 286. After subduing the blood phantom vine, Yang Chun was not particularly anxious to refine the blood phantom vine sword embryo, but started another thing that had been planned in the Blue Cloud sect to upgrade his second wood spirit power. The blood phantom vine was almost the purest second wood plant, almost comparable to the Panlai divine wood of the first wood. Otherwise, Yang Chun would not take pains to use the blood phantom vine as a second wood flying sword. The first wood spirit power has been transformed into the spirit power of the Panlai divine wood. Of course, Yang Chun will also become the spirit power of the blood phantom vine, so that when he uses the blood phantom vine flying sword in the future, it will be more compatible. Yang Chun has already done such a thing once. The last time he used the main root of the Panlai divine wood to add it to the foundation building pill. This time, Yang Chun chose the same method. With the experience of refining the third-grade first wood foundation building pill last time, Yang Chun was much more relaxed this time. However, there is only one blood phantom vine, which could not be compared with a forest of Panlai divine wood. Yang Chun could only use the vines of the blood phantom vine as medicine. This time, it only took Yang Chun a month to refine the foundation building pill. After all, Yang Chun had already built the foundation building stage. What he wanted was just a change in spirit power. He didn't need a third-grade medicinal pill of such high quality, as long as the first-grade medicinal pill was enough. After building the foundation, many things were much simpler. Before there was no foundation building, it would take a long time before building the foundation. After building the foundation, it only took a short time. After taking this second wood foundation building pill, the second wood spirit power in Yang Chun's body began its first transformation, from the ordinary second wood spirit power to the more advanced blood phantom vine spirit power. This process was slow and stable. After Yang Chun had experienced the first wood spirit power transformation and the fifth earth true essence transformation, after Yang Chun had subdued the blood phantom vine body, there would be no problem at all. In less than 10 days, Yang Chun has successfully transformed his second wood spirit power into blood demon vine spirit power. At the moment when the second wood spirit power was successfully transformed, the blood phantom vine in the sea of consciousness began to really condense into a real object, and it was no longer in a state that could not be touched at all. Amidst the rumbling sounds, Yang Chun's sea of consciousness expanded once again. However, the expansion this time was not large. It was only about 50% larger than before, but it had already expanded Yang Chun's sea of consciousness to a radius of 100 acres. The Panlai divine would also seem to grow vigorously again because of the harmony of yin and yang. The giant pillar supporting the sky was taller, and even the sky of the sea of consciousness seemed to be higher. His spiritual awareness, which had already reached the peak of the Jidan stage, seemed to have advanced by leaps and bounds after this change, breaking through countless obstacles all the way and directly rushed to the early Yuanying stage. This was simply an unexpected surprise. Even Yang Chun did not think that one day he could have the powerful spiritual awareness of the early Yuanying stage when he was in the early foundation stage. The power of the three purities secret art made Yang Chun have a new definition of the strength of the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord. His spiritual awareness entered the Yuanying stage, and Yang Chun seemed to have suddenly entered a new world. In this world, although Yang Chun had entered it in his previous life, it was not as clear and diverse as it was now. At least the complexity of the sea of consciousness was already unmatched by Yang Chun's previous life, even if he reached the great principal golden immortal level. After this transformation, The second wood spirit power was almost reduced by 2/3, leaving only 1/3, but the quality had a crazy improvement. Yang Chun consumed 2 profound yang fruits, and after all the spiritual power was filled, he stopped. Everything seemed to be in Yang Chen's plan, and the life of the disciple was calm and orderly. There was no pressure for Yang Chen to instruct the outer sect disciples, and it did not delay Yang Chen's cultivation. After the transformation of the second wood spirit power, Yang Chen once again instructed the outer sect disciples, and then welcomed 2 special guests. The people who came to the Nine Earth Mountain Villa to find Yang Chen were 2 old friends of the Hall of Eccentrics who had recently become famous in Chunyang Palace. Shi Kuei and Xie Sha did not know where they went with the head of the palace. Almost half a year after Yang Chen returned to Chunyang Palace, they appeared in front of Yang Chen. "You are really leisurely." Shi Kuei and Xie Sha were happy. It seemed that they had a good time during this time. After meeting, Shi Kuei said such a sentence. How can the 2 granduncles have time to come over? Yang Chen was also full of smiles and greeted the 2. Because the 2 guys had a Yuanying stage cultivation base, they were directly promoted to elders by the head of the palace. In terms of seniority, they were the same generation as the head of the palace and Wang Yong, so Yang Chen could only call them granduncles. What bullshit granduncles, don't give us this. When they heard Yang Chen actually call them this way, the faces of the 2 guys immediately drooped. Presumably, the most uncomfortable point in the sect included this complicated relationship of seniority, which made the 2 guys who had always been free very uncomfortable. After venting their frustrations, the 2 of them finally stated their intentions for coming here. During this time, the 2 of them had been under the guidance of the head of the palace in Chunyang Palace, looking at some things about refining and alchemy. Although they understood a lot, after all, the things collected by Chunyang Palace were for cultivators to cultivate, not for the monsters, and there were still many things that they could not understand. After thinking about it, they could only come to Yang Chen. Coincidentally, the 2 wanted to sacrificial refine their life source magic weapons. Speaking of it, the monsters usually would sacrificial refine a part of their original body as a life source magic weapon, and Shi Kuei and Xie Sha were no exception. Shi Kuei chose the 4 poisonous fangs in his mouth, and Xie Sha chose the scorpion tail stinger. The monsters would instinctively temper the strongest part of their bodies as their own instinctive magic weapons. But this method was too primitive. After seeing the refining techniques of the cultivators, Shi Kuei and Xie Sha also began to have new ideas. Their life source magic weapons could not be as rough as before. Instinctively, the 2 thought of Yang Chen. There were countless secrets that people could not figure out on Yang Chen, but Shi Kuei and Xie Sha did not tell others. They just found a free time and went to Yang Chen's side to discuss this with Yang Chen. Yang Chen was happy to discuss this with the 2 guys. This would be part of the powerful combat power of Chunyang Palace in the future. Yang Chen hoped that Chunyang Palace would be stronger. Intentionally or unintentionally, he began to point out some of the things he knew. The 2 nascent soul seniors directly stayed in the 9 Earth Mountain Villa. When they had nothing to do, they would discuss refining with Yang Chen. There were many directions that Shi Kuei and Xie Sha had never thought of before. After this discussion, both of them suddenly felt enlightened. The concept of refining began to become clear day by day. On a certain day, when everyone was discussing in full swing, Shanghai Feng suddenly rushed into the 9 Earth Mountain Villa. Yang Chen, just now Martial Uncle Wang Yong, suddenly left. He left a message for me to inform you. When Shanghai Feng saw Yang Chen, he immediately said anxiously, he said that your master was attacked and injured. He has already rushed over to help. As soon as Shanghai Feng's voice fell, he suddenly felt a chill and his whole body shivered. Chapter 287. Not only Shanghai Feng, but even Shi Kuei and Xie Sha next to him felt the same chill, as if they were suddenly in a world of ice and snow, making people shiver uncontrollably. The source of the chill, everyone found out, was on Yang Chen. But soon the 3 of them understood that this was not a chill, but a murderous aura. The terrifying, murderous aura made the three of them feel cold all over. Shikuei and Xiesha were a little better, but Shanghai Feng directly began to make the sound of his teeth trembling. Xiesha found something wrong on the spot and hurriedly shouted, "What are you doing? It's not Shangwan Shang's master." The murderous aura suddenly disappeared, but Yang Chun still had a cold face and said to Shanghai Feng, "I'm sorry, senior brother Shangwan. I lost my composure a little. Do you know who did it?" Shanghai Feng was still in shock. The scene just now scared him to death, as if he was facing a ferocious god of death. Fortunately, Yang Chun stopped in time. Otherwise, Shanghai Feng might make a fool of himself on the spot. If the three of them knew that Yang Chin's bloody river had been completely used to soak and temper the immortal beheading blade, and the killing intent released was only 1% at most, who knew how they would feel? "I don't know yet." Shanghai Feng shook his head and replied with a lingering fear. "Martial Uncle Master was in a hurry when he left. He didn't say much. He just asked me to tell you." As he said this, as if he remembered something, Shanghai Feng took out a compass. "This is what Martial Uncle Master left for you," saying that this can be used to find Martial Uncle Master himself. Yang Chun grabbed the compass and took it over to look at it carefully. He immediately understood that this was a compass to check something on Wang Yang's body, which was probably also a Chinquan bag. He immediately understood in his heart. Wang Yang certainly did not know who hurt Gao Yu, but Gao Yu must have a magic weapon on her. When she was in danger, as long as it was activated, it could notify Wang Yang himself. This was a relatively brilliant method of warning, but only nascent soul experts could refine it. But Yang Chen was also very anxious. The warning of serious injuries indicated that they had been attacked by a powerful force. He didn't know where Gao Yu was. If Wang Yang couldn't catch up, maybe there would be serious consequences. Wang Yang left in a hurry, presumably for this reason. Thinking of this, Yang Chen could not stay any longer. He stood up and was about to rush out. But after thinking for a while, he stopped and suddenly turned around to ask, "The two of you, come with me." Shikuei's eyes widened. "What are you doing?" "Kill." Yang Chen did not hide his murderous aura at all as he said to the two. "Junior brother Yang." Shangwan Feng was shocked. He didn't want to see Yang Chen kill his way over like that. In particular, he also brought Shi Kuei and Xie Sha, two masters of the Hall of Eccentrics in Yuanying Realm. Once something happened, Chunyang Palace might be in big trouble. "Senior brother Shangwan, don't stop me." As soon as Shangwan Feng opened his mouth, Yang Chun knew what he wanted to say. "They dared to hurt my master. Even the King of Heaven can't save them. Why do you think the Grand Master asked you to inform me?" Shangwan Feng was stunned, and then he could no longer speak. Wang Yang's arrangement did have some meaning. Otherwise, he, a master of the Yuanying realm, was enough. Why did he ask him to inform Yang Chun? "Senior brother, help me stay here for a few months. I will be back soon." Yang Chun reached out and pulled Shangwan Feng to his seat. Then he gestured to Shi Kuei and Xie Sha and turned away. Shi Kuei and Xie Sha joined Chunyang Palace in the past 2 years. They followed the rules, but they were also quite depressed. When they were monsters, they were free. As long as the strength did not exceed them, they could kill them if they wanted to. After holding back for 2 years, when Yang Chen mentioned taking them to kill people, they immediately followed him without saying a word. "Junior brother Yang, be careful." Shangwan Feng knew that there was no way to stop Yang Chen. He could only let him be careful. Yang Chen did not look back. He waved his hand behind him and disappeared directly at the door. Only Shangwan Feng was left in the room of the 9 Earth Mountain Villa. He sighed. He didn't know if Grandmaster Wang Yong asked him to inform Yang Chen was right or wrong. His master was seriously injured, and he hadn't been found yet. Yang Chen didn't care much. He directly summoned the shuttle, and then took Shi Kuei and Xie Sha up. The shuttle drew a dazzling light in the air and disappeared in the 9 Earth Mountain Villa in an instant. Holding the compass given by Grandmaster Wang Yong in his hand, Yang Chen began to adjust the direction. He had been leisurely in the 9 Earth Mountain Villa for the past few months. He didn't know where Gao Yu went to collect materials. Now that he followed Wang Yong's compass, he discovered that Gao Yu's direction was very likely to be the southern wasteland's 100,000 mountain range. Originally, he thought that Gao Yu was simply buying materials through the Rui shop, but after discovering that Gao Yu might have gone to the 100,000 mountain range, Yang Chun understood that it wasn't that simple. The 100,000 mountain range went deep into the southern wasteland, far away from the living area of ordinary people. Even the most savage savages would find it difficult to establish a foothold there. In the 100,000 mountain range, demon beasts were everywhere. Except for cultivators, almost no one set foot there. However, this savage place was extremely rich in resources. Because it was inaccessible, countless heavenly treasures were bred and grown here. Similarly, there were also extremely rich mineral deposits underground. Many high-level refining materials came from the 100,000 mountain range. Gao Yu presumably also wanted to find some materials, so she came to this place. There were many cultivators and demon beasts here. Not only righteous cultivators, even demonic cultivators often appeared here. It could be said that the southern wasteland's 100,000 mountain range was simply the most unruly place. Everything was decided by strength. There was no reason. Survival was the most important reason. Between the cultivators, between the righteous and evil, between the demon beasts, there were so many battles that no one would pay attention to them. Everything that happened here had nothing to do with any sex or forces. Everyone did whatever they wanted without the slightest scruple. It was also a dangerous place for all kinds of cultivators to hone their life and death experiences. In his heart, he was extremely anxious. Yang Chun even had some regrets. How could he only think about the warmth of being able to get the bright ray sword, but neglect the great danger that Gao Yu had to take? He couldn't help but urge the shuttle to the extreme. It was almost as fast as lightning to follow the footsteps of Wang Yong. When Gao Yu refined the bright ray sword in his previous life, it was not so laborious. It could be assumed that the arrival of Yang Chun in this life had changed a lot of things. Yang Chun constantly prayed in his heart that nothing bad would happen to the master. Serious injuries were serious injuries. As long as there was still a glimmer of life, Yang Chun was sure that he could pull her back from the line of life and death. The more anxious he was, the calmer Yang Chun became. Chapter 288. The 100,000 Mountains was not like the immortal falling abyss, where there was still Wu Xiong. Without Elder Wu Xiong, there would be other elders to take over. The 100,000 Mountains was not like this at all. It was simply a place where the fist was bigger. If he wanted to get justice for Gao Yu being injured, there was no other possibility except to be more ruthless than the enemy. Even with the speed of Yang Chen's shuttle, it would take at least a month to get to the 100,000 Mountains from Chunyang Palace. Wang Yong didn't know what good flying sword he had in his hand. He walked half a day earlier, but he was always ahead of Yang Chun and could not catch up. However, this also made Yang Chun feel a little relieved. The faster Wang Yong's speed, the greater the possibility of catching up with Gao Yu. Yang Chun could only pray that Gao Yu was only injured and not killed. Otherwise, even if the immortal beheading blade was destroyed, Yang Chun would wash the 100,000 Mountains with blood. When Shi Kuei and Xie Sha were still wondering about the speed of the shuttle, Yang Chun was thinking about whether the two Yuanying stage demon beast masters were enough. After the past, no one knew what would happen. Yang Chun didn't want his revenge to fail, but to get himself killed. The blood demon vine was already under his command. Speaking of it, it could match a Yuanying stage master, but Yang Chun didn't mind having a few more helpers. The bloody river in the sea of consciousness could not be used. After thinking about it, Yang Chun could only have the idea of Wan Qian and her apprentices in the Medicine Garden Dome Palace. 6 people, 1 in the middle Yuanying stage, 5 in the middle Jiedan stage. The strength of the 5 apprentices was very average. Originally, when they were in the Blue Cloud sect, they were also powerful characters. Unfortunately, they have now become idiots. Idiots are idiots, but the 6 people have only lost all their active consciousness. Some deep-rooted memories are still there, and even the instinct of cultivation is still there. During the days when Yang Chun ignored them in the dome, the 6 people sat motionless in the dome hall and silently practiced their most important cultivation method. This was a little hypnosis in Yang Chen's God-shaking art. It made them only have one thought in their minds. Before Yang Chun summoned them, They could only cultivate and nothing else. But now, Yang Chun needed their strength. Now that the 6 experts had lost their consciousness, other than killing them, Yang Chun could only refine them into puppets. However, Yang Chun hoped that they would be different from ordinary puppets. He hoped that they would not have an active consciousness, but at other times, they would still be exactly the same as ordinary cultivators. This also meant that they could become more advanced puppets than ordinary puppets. Perhaps it would be more appropriate to describe them as loyal slaves. The method Yang Chun used was not to erase all of their minds, but to make them only listen to Yang Chun's orders and work for Yang Chun without any distractions. There were no worries, no fears, no problems that needed to be considered, only slaves that followed Yang Chun's orders. Speaking of it, the effect of the 6 people's cultivation during this period of time was much better than the effect of 6 people's seclusion at the same time. Not to mention anything else, it was the most difficult thing for a normal cultivator to achieve in the process of cultivation. Now, the 6 of them did not have to worry about any inner demons during their cultivation process, much less things like breaking through to the next realm. As they focused, their cultivation techniques flowed more smoothly than before, and their cultivation base also improved slightly. What Yang Chun had to do now was to make a few people completely his loyal slave puppets. This required a special technique and a strong spiritual awareness. Wan Xian was now simply hypnotized by Yang Chun, but she was in the middle stage of the Yuanying stage. If she wanted to command her like a finger, Yang Chen's current spiritual awareness could not reach it. However, the 5 apprentices of Wan Xian were all in the middle stage of the Jidan stage. With the strength of Yang Chen's current early Yuanying stage spiritual awareness, it was enough for him to complete the control of the 5 Jidan stage masters. This kind of control was to plant Yang Chen's special spiritual awareness mark in the sea of consciousness of the 5 people, and then achieve the purpose of controlling the 5 people's bodies. Only Yang Chun, a person with an unusually strong spiritual awareness, could really control several people at the same time. The 5 female apprentices, including Wan Xian, were all of the metal attribute, and it was most suitable to cultivate in the dome of the medicine garden. Through the dome of the medicine garden, when Yang Chun performed the technique, he would not let Shi Kuei and Xiexia see anything wrong. Because there was no need to refine the target's whole body, just the control of the spiritual awareness. The person was still the original living person, plus the 5 people had already lost their sanity. The difficulty was even lower. On the way, Yang Chun did not enter the dome hall, just holding the bottle cap of the bottle in his hand. It took less than 20 days, and he had already completed the complete control of the 5 women. Shi Kuei and Xiexia were beside Yang Chun, but they just thought that Yang Chun was sacrificially refining the bottle cap in his own way and did not know what was happening inside. The 5 metal attribute Jidan stage masters had a balanced cultivation base, which was just right for a formation in Yang Chen's mind, the 5 directions mysterious fairy formation. The 5 people's formation, according to the position of the 5 worlds, could erupt with a more powerful attack power than the 5 people combined. However, the formation of the 5 women was definitely one of Yang Chen's tricks. After Yang Chun trapped the 5 people, he never had a chance to change their appearance. As long as they showed up, they might fall into the eyes of everyone. Unless it was a last resort, Yang Chun would not use them, just like he would not easily use the Bloody River. For the next few days, Yang Chun and the 2 monsters spent the journey in silence. Along the way, Yang Chun's expression was very calm, but Shi Kuei and Xiexia were both ruthless characters who killed people. Naturally, they could feel the kind of suppressed storm contained in Yang Chun's calmness. He was afraid that once he got bad news, Yang Chun would definitely start a massacre. I don't know why. Even if Shi Kuei and Xiexia were already masters of the Yuanying stage, they still had a little fear of Yang Chun. This was the instinct of the monsters, and it had nothing to do with the cultivation base. Even they couldn't say why. It seemed that Wang Yang's figure finally stopped moving and stopped somewhere. Under Yang Chen's great joy, he controlled the shuttle and quickly approached it. The 2 sides were originally less than a day's journey. Yang Chun only spent half a day more and found that the pointer of the compass trembled, showing that Wang Yong's figure was nearby. Brush. The shuttle was directly taken back by Yang Chun, and the figures of the three people immediately appeared out of thin air. After being bored for nearly a month, Shi Kuei and Xiesha were already bored and began to move their hands and feet frantically. Yang Chen's spiritual awareness opened wildly, and the spiritual awareness threads were thrown in all directions in an instant, feeling the surrounding situation. Soon after, his figure shook and he found the location of his master ancestor Wang Yong. Together with Wang Yong's figure, it was his master Gao Yu, who Yang Chun had long been familiar with. At this moment, Gao Yu was lying between Wang Yong's hands, and her hands and feet were hanging softly. If there was no breath in her mouth and nose, Yang Chun might suspect that she had died. Aware of this situation, Yang Chun finally breathed a sigh of relief. His master was still alive, then everything was fine. Chapter 289. Hey! Wang Yong, who had just found Gao Yu and stabilized her injury, was surprised and found the figure of Yang Chun. He thought that Yang Chun would meet him on the way back a few days later, but he didn't expect Yang Chun to come so fast. However, Yang Chun has always had extraordinary performance, and this is nothing. How is master? Yang Chun rushed directly to Wang Yong's side at the speed of a sprint, anxiously looking at Gao Yu in Wang Yong's arms. Gao Yu's hands and feet were hanging down at the moment. Her face was pale, and there was almost no anger. She was seriously injured, ate a life-saving medicinal pill, and has been holding on until now. Wang Yong was also good at refining, but he was not proficient in alchemy. In the face of Gao Yu's injury, he was almost at a loss. Eat this. Yang Chun took out a medicinal pill directly without thinking about it, and was about to send it into Gao Yu's mouth, but Gao Yu was already unconscious at this time. How could she consciously swallow the medicinal pill? Wang Yong looked at the medicinal pill and felt a little familiar, but he couldn't remember it for a while. He couldn't help but ask. He was not worried that Yang Chun would harm Gao Yu, but he was afraid that this medicinal pill would not work. Ganoderma Halu Pill. Yang Chen's answer made Wang Yong overjoyed. Ganoderma Halu Pill was a healing medicine. It used the Millennium Ganoderma and the 10,000 Years Jade Dew as the main medicine. Any injury below the Yuanying stage could be quickly recovered. However, now Gao Yu was unconscious, and there was no way to feed the medicinal pill into it. Yang Chen was anxious and turned his head and looked around. In addition to himself, there was Wang Yong, Shi Kuei, and Xiesha. There was no one to help. After thinking about it, Yang Chun gritted his teeth and put the Ganoderma Halu pill into his mouth. Regardless of the master and disciple, he directly held Gao Yu's head and put the pill in his mouth. The Lingji Mushroom Jade pill melted in his mouth and turned into a liquid in Yang Chen's mouth. Yang Chun slowly poured it into Gao Yu's mouth, then gently massaged Gao Yu's throat. With a slight force, a mouthful of saliva flowed along Gao Yu's throat and slowly entered her stomach. Wang Yong was at the side, but when he saw Yang Chen's actions, he didn't stop him at all. At this time, saving a life was more important. How could he care about the other trifles? Even if this was a little out of line, he couldn't care less. Moreover, among the people present, Yang Chun was the most suitable. They couldn't let Wang Yong, Shi, Kuei, Xiesha do this. Yang Chun would be the first to disagree. The pill was very effective. When it entered Gao Yu's stomach, it immediately turned into a warm current that began to heal Gao Yu's injuries. Gao Yu's face also looked much rosier. Who did it? Seeing the effect of the pill, Yang Chun breathed a sigh of relief and immediately began to ask about Gao Yu's situation. In the face of his master ancestor Wang Yong, Yang Chun couldn't be too arrogant, just asked in a calm tone. I don't know. Wang Yong shook his head, and his eyes were also filled with irrepressible anger. When I came over, little Yu had already hidden in a hole in the ground over there. However, the injuries on her body are very complicated. A lot of people thought the most serious injury is the back injury. It may be a sneak attack from the other party. Listening to Wang Yong's words, Yang Chen also began to carefully check the injuries on Gao Yu's body. As his spiritual awareness swept over, he suddenly became furious. On Gao Yu's body, there were at least 8 serious injuries. Her arm was broken, and one of her legs was broken. At this moment, Wang Yong had fixed and sorted out the injuries, but the other injuries were almost fatal. Obviously, the other party simply wanted to kill and did not intend to keep Gao Yu's life. If Gao Yu hadn't taken a life-saving pill made from the best old mountain ginseng given by Yang Chen in time, she wouldn't have been able to hold on until now. Even so, Gao Yu's injuries were precarious. If Wang Yong and Yang Chen had come a little later by a day or two, they might not have been able to save the situation. Before, Chu Heng just scolded Gao Yu in passing, and Yang Chen was already furious. Now someone dared to hurt Gao Yu to such an extent. If this could be tolerated, what couldn't be tolerated? What Yang Chen couldn't accept most was that Gao Yu came to the 100,000 Mountains in order to refine the flying sword for Yang Chen because of the lack of materials. Because of Yang Chen, she suffered such a serious injury. How could Yang Chen not be angry? Master Ancestor, what materials is Master looking for here? Yang Chen forcibly suppressed his great anger and asked Wang Yong. Red Sun, Iron Soul. Wang Yong was also not calm, but he still told the name of the material to Yang Chen. Little Yu intends to refine a good fire attribute flying sword for you. She lacks the Red Sun, Iron Soul. This thing can only be found in the 100,000 Mountains, so she rushed over. I didn't expect to be plotted against. Since taking the Ganoderma Halu pill, Gao Yu's complexion had obviously improved a lot. The injuries on her body were also slowly alleviating, and she seemed to be in good condition. However, it was impossible to heal such a serious injury immediately. It would take at least half a year to recuperate. Master's Qinquan bag was taken away. Yang Chen took a closer look and noticed that the Qinquan bag on Gao Yu had disappeared. Wang Yong would definitely not embezzle Gao Yu's Qinquan bag. The only explanation was that it was taken away. Little Yu's magic weapon now is only the natal flying sword and the 7 birds' feather coat on her body. The 7 birds' feather coat has been destroyed. If it weren't for the pearl on her clothes, I wouldn't have been able to find her. Wang Yong suppressed his anger and looked at Gao Yu's unconscious but still showing a little pain on her face. He said angrily, "It's a great fortune in misfortune. She escaped here and launched a distress signal. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. This was indeed a great fortune in misfortune. Otherwise, Yang Chen and Wang Yong could only wait for the news of Gao Yu's death. Stealing the Qinquan bag means that there is something that someone wants." Yang Chen analyzed coldly. "Whoever dares to touch my master, no matter who it is, I will let them die without a burial place. Yang Chen, you take little Yu back to Chunyang Palace. I want to check here again. Which bastard dares to touch my disciple?" Wang Yong was also a hot-tempered person. Shielding was almost the tradition of his family. Gao Yu was hurt like this. It would be strange if Wang Yong could bear it. "Master Ancestor, this disciple thinks that it is more appropriate for you to take Master back." Yang Chen shook his head and directly rejected Wang Yong's suggestion. Listening to Yang Chen's words, Wang Yong had already glared directly. It seemed that if Yang Chen did not give a reasonable explanation, he would not be polite to Yang Chen. "You are a Yuanying stage ancestor. Even if those people did it, who dares to admit it in front of you?" Yang Chen said slowly, "This disciple is different. I am just a younger generation in the foundation establishment stage. Presumably, someone will never be afraid to admit it in front of this disciple. Anyway, they will definitely kill. This disciple would like to see which bastard dares to hurt Master." Chapter 290. The Grand Master was like this, and so was the Grand Disciple. Once they spoke, they would see which bastard dared to hurt people. Shikuei and Xiesha wanted to laugh. Fortunately, both of them knew the current situation, and no one laughed out loud. Wang Yong groaned. What Yang Chen said was the truth. Seeing him, a Yuanying stage ancestor, who would be stupid enough to admit that they had attacked his apprentice. On the contrary, Yang Chen, the younger generation, might be able to deceive some people into underestimating him. Maybe he could find out who did it. After a while, Wang Yong finally nodded and approved Yang Chen's statement. "Well, I will take little Yu back. You should be careful here. As he said, he took out a few ball-like things from the Chinquin bag and gave them to Yang Chun. These are a few fire thunder beads that I refined. They are very lethal. Use them when necessary. Don't save them. Yang Chun reached out and took it, but handed over a small jade bottle in turn. Grandmaster, this is a bottle of Lingji mushroom jade pill. Give it to Master every 5 days, and the injury can be better. Both of them cared about Gao Yu, and no one was polite, so they accepted each other. Then Wang Yong looked at Yang Chun and looked at Shi Kuei and Xiesha next to Yang Chun, and he was relieved about Yang Chun. There were 2 Yuanying stage monsters following them, and these 2 guys were masters who were good at hiding their whereabouts. There should not be too much problem. Find the culprit. No matter what his background is, kill him for me. Wang Yong said with hatred, no matter how big it is, I will bear it. If he dares to touch little Yu, I will kill his whole family. Grandmaster, take care. Yang Chun nodded and then watched Wang Yong leave with Gao Yu. It was not until Wang Yong's figure could no longer be seen in the air that Yang Chun breathed a long sigh of relief. Master was fine, and Wang Yong took him back, so it should be safe enough on the way. As long as he returned to Chunyang Palace, there would be no danger, as long as he could rest in peace. But Gao Yu was seriously injured in a sneak attack, and this matter could not be over. In the innumerable, huge mountains, everyone used their own means. It was either you die or I live, but when it came to Gao Yu, Yang Chun could not tolerate it, especially when Gao Yu was looking for suitable refining materials for himself. The place where Wang Yong came out was a hole that had been dug. Gao Yu must have been hiding inside. Yang Chun didn't say anything and directly went in to take a look. That was a naturally formed hole in the ground. No one knew how Gao Yu found it. After being seriously injured, she struggled to escape here. Then, she used her remaining spiritual power to launch a distress signal and cover the hole. Then, she fell into a coma. Yang Chun could still see Gao Yu spitting out a large mouthful of blood. At this moment, the blood had seeped into the ground and dyed the soil into a purple-black color. Looking at these, Yang Chun thought of the pain Gao Yu had suffered, and he hated those who did it. However, this was not the place where the attack took place. Except for Gao Yu fleeing here in a hurry, there was no trace of it. He couldn't find any clues from here. After a while, Yang Chun went out of the hole and buried the entire hole. He called Shi Kuei and Xiesha and began to leave. Where are we going? Xiesha asked casually. Master's Chinquin bag was robbed. There must be some good things. Let's go around and see where there is a trading market. Maybe there will be clues. Yang Chun was angry, but not crazy. He just calmly analyzed all the places where he could find clues. Speaking of it, Gao Yu was the safest way to identify the culprit after she woke up, but the other party was obviously sneak attack from behind. Yang Chun was not sure that Gao Yu knew the identity of the other party. On the contrary, it was easier to get answers from some other aspects. The innumerable huge mountains was not completely a place where the strong preyed on the weak. At least there were a few places that were relatively safe. It was a place where cultivators and demon beasts spontaneously formed to conduct transactions while they were busy killing each other. Because there were various parties involved, everyone agreed that they could not fight in these places and all grievances had to be resolved outside. These places were the focus of Yang Chun's investigation. As long as he could find some clues, Yang Chun could let Shi Kuei and Xiesha communicate with the monsters in the innumerable huge mountains. Maybe they could find the place where the incident happened and then find the culprit. The 2 powerful monsters, under Yang Chun's instructions, once again turned into their original forms. A palm-sized sand scorpion and a palm-sized viper were entrenched on Yang Chun's shoulder. They were like the 2 most ordinary animals. At first glance, others would think that they were Yang Chun's pets and would not even think that they were monsters. A flying sword also appeared in Yang Chun's hand, which was given to Yang Chun by Wu Xiong after Yang Chun refined the heaven-seizing pill. The grade of the flying sword was very high. In Yang Chun's hands, this was the highest grade flying sword in addition to the guardian sword array of the Medicine Garden Dome. Holding it in the hands of Yang Chun, there was an obvious show-off posture. Yang Chun, a small disciple of the Foundation establishment stage, actually had a flying sword that was enough for a Yuanying stage master to use. In the eyes of anyone, it was a waste. Those who mingled in the innumerable huge mountains were at least masters of the Jidon stage. Occasionally, there would be a junior who was at the peak of the foundation establishment stage, but they were also careful not to show it, for fear of being targeted. There was no one like Yang Chun who was in the early stage of the foundation establishment stage and swaggered around with a treasure. Yang Chun did not deliberately look for the whereabouts of the gathering points in the innumerable huge mountains. He just casually found a direction and began to fly on his sword. The flying speed was not fast, but the sword light was released far away, as if he was afraid that others could not see it. Just after flying for less than 2 hours, someone immediately saw the scene on Yang Chen's side, and a seemingly powerful spiritual awareness swept over unscrupulously. Yang Chen ignored it and continued to fly on his own, but the owner of the spiritual awareness could no longer hold back. Whoosh! A sword light flew quickly from mountainside and flew straight towards Yang Chen. Before the sword light approached, the voice of the owner of the sword light had already come over fellow Taoist. Please wait. Yang Chen's figure paused in the air, then slowed down and slowly stopped. In the eyes of the person who came, this was clearly a performance that he had not yet fully mastered the flying sword. Seeing this situation, the person who came was even more determined and quickly appeared in front of Yang Chen, but it was a male Jidon stage master. Fellow Taoist, why are you in such a hurry? Where are you going? There was a smile on the face of the Jidon stage master, looking at Yang Chen like a big bad wolf looking at a delicious lamb. I just want to find someone to ask for directions. On Yang Chen's face, the smile was more abundant than that of the Jidon stage master, and his eyes narrowed almost into a line. It just so happens that fellow Taoist appeared. I wonder if you can give me some advice? Chapter 291. Sherwan Mountains is very dangerous. With a warm smile on his face, the Jidon stage master stretched out his hand directly and grabbed Yang Chen's wrist. He said with a smile, "Didn't your elders remind you?" With a thought, a spiritual power rushed directly into the arm he was holding. The Jidon stage master seemed to have done something that had nothing to do with him. He said calmly, "It is also a kind of happiness to die without knowing anything. If you want to blame, you can only blame yourself for not knowing how to hide the good things." After saying this, the Jidon stage master's face showed a stunned look. The foundation stage junior he was looking forward to did not show a hurt look, and there was even no change in his calmness. "Are you going to kill me?" The other party's astonishment was seen in Yang Chen's eyes, and Yang Chen's face also showed a smile. "Then don't blame me." The Jidon stage master was shocked. He was about to let go and leave, but his palm hurt, and then a heart-wrenching pain came. It was too late to let go. Looking down, what he was holding was not Yang Chen's wrist, but a blood-red vine as thick as a wrist. At this moment, tiny thorns grew out of the vines and pierced into his skin. If this was the case, the key was that the thorn that pierced into his hand was spreading along his blood vessels to the whole body. In just a while, it had already drilled through his arm and shoulder and entered his heart. The Jidon stage master was scared to death on the spot. What is this? It's so evil. Even if you use your ass to think, you can know that what directly drilled into your heart was by no means a nourishing medicine. Just as he tried to force out his spiritual power, he found that his whole body's spiritual power seemed to have been sucked up by this blood-colored vine, and he couldn't lift a trace. The cold sweat that had not appeared for a long time was instantly covered with the forehead of the Jidon stage master. The Jidon stage master looked at the smiling Yang Chen opposite him, as if he was looking at a big demon, so scared. "I only wanted to ask for directions, but since you want me dead, I don't mind teaching you a lesson." Yang Chen was still smiling and said, "Now, can I ask you for directions?" In addition to nodding frantically, the Jidon stage master opposite Yang Chen couldn't think of anything else to do. He could only hope that Yang Chen would ask him as soon as possible so that this young master would be satisfied. Perhaps there would be a chance to salvage the situation. In Yang Chen's words just now, there seemed to be a hint of moderation. He just wanted to teach him a lesson. "Where is the nearest market?" Yang Chen took a few steps back, sat on a rock, and asked. "It's about 2 days' journey in that direction." The Jindan stage master did not dare to be negligent. Although his body was still trembling, his finger quickly pointed in a direction. There is a Jieyun Valley. Usually everyone trades there. Did anything happen in the market recently? For example, people snatching treasures and killing people. Facing a guy who was restrained by him, Yang Chun did not think that he was lucky enough to find the right person at once, so he was not afraid to reveal his purpose. This kind of thing happens almost every day. It's really not worth paying attention to. The Jidan stage master smiled bitterly, ignoring his already somewhat limp body, and carefully replied, "Do you want to find someone or something? I'm more familiar with this place. Maybe I can help." Indeed, in the Shirwan Mountains, it was too common to kill people and snatch their treasures. Even between Yang Chun and the Jidan stage master, wasn't it the same play? It was just that the ending was different. It was really not a big deal here. "I want the Red Sun Iron Soul. Where can I get it?" In his previous life, Yang Chun only heard of the chaos here, but he had never been here in person. He really didn't expect it to be so blatant here. But this was also good. He could do things without scruples. Red Sun, Iron Soul? The Jidan stage master frowned and began to think while trembling. After a while, he slapped his head, as if he remembered something, and replied, "I heard that there was an auction of the Red Sun Iron Soul in the market 2 months ago, and it was finally bought by a mysterious woman. If you're interested, you can go to the market and ask." The mysterious woman bought the Red Sun Iron Soul? Yang Chen's heart jumped quickly. Could it be his master? He bought the Red Sun Iron Soul, but it was coveted and killed to snatch the treasure? This was probably the case. Which market? Where is it? Yang Chan suppressed the excitement in his heart and asked calmly, "How do I find a mysterious woman?" "Not in the Jieyun Valley." The Jidan stage master saw that Yang Chan was interested, and he also had a little more joy of survival. He pointed in another direction and said, "This direction, over at the demonic flame valley. There are many beastkin cultivators and demonic cultivators there, and there are many things. But if you don't have super strength, don't go there." Demonic Flame Valley. Yang Chun had firmly remembered the name in his heart. Looking at the Jidan stage master, who was now respectful and smiling, his heart moved. Yang Chun suddenly asked again, "Recently, is there anyone being chased around? Is there anyone looking for someone's whereabouts with great fanfare?" The Jidan stage master began to ponder. Yang Chun asked so clearly that it was almost certain that Yang Chun was looking for someone, and he was definitely looking for those who were chased, not the one being chased. Needless to say, it was definitely revenge. However, with Yang Chen's cultivation in the early stage of foundation establishment, it was impossible for him to behave atrociously in the demonic flame valley. Just as he was about to persuade a few words, he suddenly realized that his life and death were still in the hands of Yang Chun. He didn't dare to say anything more. He could only rack his brains to recall and look for the news that could bring him more chances of survival. After thinking about it, he couldn't remember any big movements around him recently. He could only shake his head no. After that, for fear that Yang Chun would make a move, he hurriedly said, "Are you looking for someone? I can lead the way." "You lead the way?" Yang Chun sneered and said faintly, "We don't know each other. I just asked the way and you want to kill me. Lead the way for me. Am I not afraid that you will take me into some devil's den? Spare me." The Jidan stage master had already heard a trace of danger from Yang Chen's mouth and hurriedly begged for mercy. But Yang Chun did not intend to give him a chance. The blood phantom vine that had been inserted into the body of the Jidan stage master suddenly began to suck frantically. "There is no injustice. There is no hatred between you and me. You want to take my life? I can't say that I can only offend you." The Jidan stage master only heard the last few words of Yang Chun and fell into the boundless darkness. A Jidan stage master was now not enough for the blood phantom vine. After sucking the flesh and blood of a master of the Quasi-Shang stage, it was easy to deal with the Jidan stage master. In a moment, the Jidan stage master was left with only a piece of bones. Chapter 292. From here to the Magic Flame Valley, even by flying shuttle, it would take half a month, but Yang Chun used an ordinary flying sword to hurry. This time became a month. The Chinquan bag of the Jidon Realm Master had been put away by Yang Chun, and the things inside, Yang Chun did not look at it. At this time, Yang Chun was full of anger because of Gao Yu's injury. How could he pay attention to a little spoil of war? Yang Chun would not completely believe the words of a Jidon Realm Master. He still planned to go to Jieyun Valley first, see the situation here, and then make a plan. Anyway, it was only a 2-day journey. It would not hinder Yang Chun too much. Jieyun Valley was just a small marketplace in the 100,000 Mountains. It was also the closest to the edge. Relatively speaking, it was the place with the most human cultivators, whether it was the Tao cultivators or the devil cultivators. There were more than the beast cultivators. The valley was very warm. It seemed that someone had arranged a small rejuvenation array underground. This array did not have much use. It was to ensure that Jieyun Valley could maintain a constant temperature range, whether it was winter or summer. In short, it was spring all year round. There were not many people, but they were uneven. At least Yang Chun saw 3 devil cultivators. One of them was followed by a pitch-black zombie. One had bloodshot eyes, for fear that others could not see that he had killed a lot. Another was a woman, but she was coquettish. In public, she did not hesitate to throw flirtatious eyes, and even when she saw Yang Chun, she smiled a few times. Not far away, there was also a beast cultivator, probably at the peak of the Jidon realm, but he did not hide his demon aura. He sat calmly on the ground and seemed to be breathing. In the other direction, there were 3 masters from the Tao sects. They were also sitting and breathing, not worried about being attacked by others. Although the 100,000 Mountains paid attention to the law of the jungle. In these markets, it was strictly prohibited to use force. This was also the supply station for all the cultivators. Everyone strictly abided by the rules. There was no need for a powerful person to preside over the rules. As long as someone broke the rules, all the cultivators would gang up on that person. No one wanted to be the target of public criticism, so they could only abide by the rules. However, when Yang Chun entered the Jieyun Valley, it attracted everyone's attention. The lowest cultivation level that appeared here was at least in the early stage of gold core. There had never been anyone like Yang Chun, who looked like a foundation-building novice. There was no bemoaning the state of the universe or pitying the fate of mankind. It was as if everyone was looking at Yang Chun as if he was their prey. Yang Chun could feel the greed in the eyes of the people around him as he walked through the broken cloud valley. I want to buy some Flaming Sun Iron Soul. Where can I find it? Yang Chun did not care about this and walked into the biggest shop in Broken Cloud Valley. He casually pushed out a few kilograms of low-grade spirit stones to the receptionist and asked directly. Although he was just a shop assistant, he was also a master of the peak foundation building realm. Looking at Yang Chun, he looked down at the spirit stones on the table in front of him and shook his head slightly. These are not enough to buy information. Yang Chun did not care. He took out a 1,000-year-old profound yang fruit from the medicine garden and put it on the few kilograms of spirit stones. Seeing the 1,000-year-old profound yang fruit, the shop assistant's eyes lit up, and then there was a complicated look on his face. He looked at Yang Chun with a smile and replied, "A few days ago, I heard that a batch of Flaming Sun Iron Soul appeared in the Magic Flame Valley, but it has been bought in the auction house. Is it possible to buy it?" Yang Chun was not surprised by this news. He did not doubt that the Jidon stage master who died in his hands and did not even know his name had the courage to lie under the bondage of the blood phantom vine. He just wanted to know more details. "I am willing to pay a high price." The flying sword used by Yang Chun was originally a high-grade fire attribute flying sword given by Wu Xiong. If it was refined with the Flaming Sun Iron Soul, the quality of the flying sword could be raised to a higher level. In this regard, the shop assistant's eyesight was still there, so he did not doubt anything. Flaming Sun Iron Soul is relatively rare. It is difficult to find a piece for decades. If you want it, you probably have to find a buyer. The shop assistant was not in the 100,000 Mountains for a day or two, especially in these markets. His knowledge was not generally broad. He also knew the market very well. He immediately shook his head and gave advice. "I want the news of the buyer. Can you give it to me or help me contact him?" Yang Chun frowned slightly and asked again. "It's not easy. The shop assistant shook his head. The auction house of the 100,000 Mountains has always prohibited the disclosure of any information about the buyer and the seller, but the word "but" aroused Yang Chen's interest, and he hurriedly asked, "But what? If you're not in a hurry, you could try to leave a purchase message in the auction house. Once there is something you need, the auction house will inform you immediately." The shop assistant smiled and pointed out a bright path to Yang Chen. "It's just that this kind of purchase has to pay a high price. Of course, if you really need it, you must be willing to pay this price." Yang Chen nodded non-committally, then looked up and said, "The last question, is there an auction here these 2 days?" "You came at a bad time." The shop assistant shook his head. Jiayun Valley is very small. On weekdays, everyone just buys some supplies here. The real good things have to go to the big market. Magic Flame Valley has a big auction in the near future. You can try your luck." Yang Chen did not ask anything more, and only gestured for the things on the table to belong to the shop assistant. The shop assistant happily kept the mysterious yang fruit and a few kilograms of spirit stones, then turned around to leave. However, just as he turned around, the shop assistant seemed to have thought of something and turned back. He smiled and said, "Seeing that it is your first time here, let me remind you, the 100,000 Mountains are not like your sect, is full of danger. If you have any good things, don't put them on the table for others to see. Otherwise, you won't even know how you died." "Thank you for the reminder." Yang Chen was a little surprised that the shop assistant would be so kind. However, since someone reminded him, Yang Chen did not mind thanking him a little. "It seems that you have a sect. If you need anything, it is better to ask your sect elders to help." The shop assistant added, "With your cultivation, it is really dangerous here. Listen to my advice. Leave the Jiayun Valley now, and use the fastest speed to escape back to your sect. You might still be able to make it." With that, he did not care if Yang Chen listened, and turned to leave without looking back. "I can't wait for someone to come knocking on my door." Yang Chen lowered his head and muttered to himself, but other than him, no one else could hear him. Chapter 293. As if to verify Yang Chen's thoughts, not long after Yang Chen left Stop Cloud Valley, he sensed the people surrounding him. Sneering in his heart, Yang Chen continued to control the flying sword and fly forward leisurely. No one noticed that the small snake and scorpion on Yang Chen's body had disappeared without a trace. Shio, the sound of the flying sword sweeping past forced Yang Chen's body to stop. 2 figures suddenly appeared in front of him. They were 2 of the people from the Dao sect in Stop Cloud Valley. He hadn't spoken yet, and there was a burst of laughter behind Yang Chen. Yang Chen didn't even need to turn his head to know that it was the demon sect woman who had been flirting with Yang Chen in the market. While he was in the air, a zombie silently appeared under his feet. It was like a soundless cheetah. Next to the zombie was the demon sect disciple who had been controlling the zombie. On the left, a demonic aura rushed into the sky, while on the right, waves of murderous intent raged. A pair of blood-red eyes stared at Yang Chen, like a hungry wolf staring at its prey. "Is everyone here?" Yang Chen looked at the people who were slowly approaching him and smiled. "This is indeed a good place to kill and rob. Kid, we won't go too far. Leave behind your Cosmos sack and flying sword. Scram as far as you can," a Dao sect disciple opposite him said fiercely. "What if I don't?" Yang Chen looked at the person opposite him calmly and asked slowly, "Then you can die." The person's expression changed. As he spoke, he started to make his move. The flying sword in his hand flashed and flew toward Yang Chen. Ding! A clear sound rang between Yang Chen and the person who had spoken. The surrounding people were stunned. What was going on? Just as this thought appeared in their minds, a gray ribbon suddenly appeared in front of them. The long ribbon was like a living thing. It was extremely nimble and instantly wrapped around the flying sword. Upon seeing this scene, the gate of Dao disciple who was wielding the flying sword was shocked. He activated his divine sense and wanted to withdraw his flying sword. However, the long gray belt was unusually flexible and tough. It wrapped around the flying sword, making it unable to move at all. When the others saw that the situation was not good, they all shouted loudly and released their respective magic weapons. However, Just as their Dharma treasures left their bodies tightened. When he took a closer look, he saw that a long ribbon of the same color was wrapped around his body. After wrapping around the bodies of these people, the long belt tightened, and they immediately let out blood-curdling screams. In an instant, all of them passed out. No matter what kind of magic treasures they were, they all fell to the ground. Without the control of the owner's divine sense, everything became ownerless. The zombie was originally still moving, but now was also unable to move after being swept up. Yang Chun just took the flying sword, and his body slowly fell from the air to the ground. The slender ribbon in the air also began to concentrate on Yang Chen's side. The slender ribbon turned into Shi Kuei's body. He had already changed into his original form and turned his body into a thumb-thick but thousands of feet long. Those people were caught off guard, and all of them were caught off guard. Shi Kuei was originally very good at concealment, plus his cultivation was far higher than these guys. Those people had been surrounded by Shi Kuei's body, but they were still unaware. The blood phantom vine quickly replaced Shi Kuei's body and entangled a group of guys. Even the zombie was no exception. After a while, the group of people woke up under the stimulation of Yangchen. Every injustice has its perpetrator. Every debt has its debtor. If you want to kill me, you must be prepared to be killed. Several people were entangled by the blood phantom vine and were powerless. Listening to Yang Chen's words, all of them felt a chill in their hearts. While speaking, Yang Chen did not forget to communicate with the monster cultivator with his divine sense. I don't know who you are, and I don't want to know who you are. Yang Chen continued. I just want to know one thing. He paused for a while, as if to give these people some time to digest and recall, and then continued to ask. I want to know, someone chased a woman a few days ago. It should not be far from here. Who did it? I don't know. Everyone showed a look of anxiousness, and the first to speak was the demonic cultivator with red eyes. Even in such a situation, he did not seem to be afraid. Yang Chun frowned and suddenly found that the blood phantom vine entangled the guy was a little abnormal. Just as he was about to speak, the guy suddenly laughed and his figure rose to the sky. The blood phantom vine entangled him was unknowingly untied by him and even deceived Yang Chun. Just a blood phantom vine? You want to subdue me? My Holocaust sex blood escape technique is not an undeserved reputation. In the laughter, the whole body of the demonic cultivator turned blood red, like a ray of light, just flashed and immediately disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. The voice of laughter has not yet landed. There was a loud bang, and the bloody figure that had just flown away flew back at a faster speed than when he left. The person was still in the air, and several vines of the blood phantom vine rolled him up frantically, and the barbs penetrated deeply into the body of the bloody figure. This time, Yang Chun did not give him any chance, and directly launched the blood phantom vine and began to suck the blood crazily. In just a few breaths, the bloody figure turned into a bloody mummy in front of everyone, and there was no more vitality. I don't like people who don't cooperate. Yang Chen didn't look at the mummy again, but said slowly to the remaining people, who else wants to run? Just try. The remaining people all shook their heads, and Yang Chun didn't say much to them. With a thought, the zombie was raised in front of Yang Chun by the blood phantom vine. An iron corpse that has been sacrificially refined for 100 years. Humph. The technique is rough and vulnerable. Shaking his head and judging, regardless of how ugly the face of the demonic cultivator who controlled the corpse was, he said directly, "Since you can't speak, I won't keep you." A hissing sound that made people feel sour came from the iron corpse. Everyone looked closely, but found that the iron corpse seemed to be corroded by something highly poisonous, and it began to fester with big holes. The hissing sound was the sound of the zombie being corroded. Not long after, the incomparably stiff iron corpse turned into a pool of pus and flowed on the ground. It even corroded the ground, forming a few sizable pits. Only then did the terrifying hissing sound stop. I want to ask the question twice. Yang Chan faced the remaining guys again. Whoever can tell me the news can live. If you don't know, then unfortunately, this day next year will be the anniversary of your death. I know some. I know some. Please don't kill me. This time, it was the charming witch who spoke. Chapter 294. Under the threat of death, the charming witch in the market was now deathly pale. Her whole body had almost curled up into a ball and was shivering. The words of fear were trembling a little, which inspired a girl's fear to the extreme, making people can't help but want to pity her. Don't kill me. Don't kill me. The witch kept saying, I will tell you what I know. I am willing to serve you as a slave. Don't kill me. Seeing Yang Chun looking over, the witch's eyes seemed to have a little more desire to survive. The expression of doing anything in order to survive, coupled with her somewhat exposed clothes, coupled with the still charming face that was just frightened, was a living slave for Yang Chun. You dare to show your incompetence in front of me with less than half of the beauty girl magic power? Yang Chun was like a stone heart. Tell me what you know, or die. 2 months ago, someone did chase a woman around here. It was done by the people of Hidden Dragon Cave and Reincarnation Valley. The witch didn't dare to say anything more, and said it quickly. I'm sorry. Yang Chun shook his head regretfully and said to the witch regretfully, You may have forgotten a fact. The blood phantom vine has taken root in your heart. No lie can deceive your own heart. You don't know anything at all. Die. After saying that, the demoness suddenly let out a miserable cry. She only screamed once before there was no more sound. Under the gaze of several other people, the beautiful body of the witch turned into a dry corpse of skin and bones in a moment, and there was no longer the beauty before. After killing 2 people and a zombie in quick succession, the rest of the guys no longer had the thought of lying to get away with it. They desperately tried to recall what had happened recently, try to fight for a chance to live. Spare my life. We are all from Taoism. Spare my life. The Taoism disciple who first started the fight, at this moment, could not see the arrogant appearance just now, and almost cried, I have only been here for less than half a month. I don't know anything at all. It's only been half a month, and you've already learned how to rob houses. Not bad. Yang Chun just nodded faintly, and then smiled softly. That is, you are useless, die. Another blood-curdling scream. A dried corpse. The remaining Tao cultivator, devil cultivator, and beast cultivator began to tremble uncontrollably. Seeing that Yang Chun was looking at him, the demonic cultivator who had his zombie destroyed screamed in horror. Looks like you haven't thought of anything that can save your life. Yang Chun shook his head regretfully, and the devil cultivator's terrifying screams came to an abrupt end. His body rapidly shrunk and curled up, and before long, he had joined the dried corpse on the ground. It was not that Yang Chun was bloodthirsty. In 100,000 mountains, being soft-hearted was meaningless, and no one would appreciate it. Here, only the strong preyed on the weak and relied on the strong to bully the weak. If you let others go, others would think that you were easy to bully. Now the atmosphere in Yang Chen's heart was uneasy, and what he wanted to know most was who was chasing after his master. Of course, those people would not take the initiative to admit it. Yang Chun could only use this method to attract the guys who might know along the way and force them to die. Maybe he could get some information. Now in front of Yang Chun, there was only a Tao disciple and a beast cultivator left. Yang Chun looked over, and the Tao disciple's trembling lips trembled for a long time, but he could not say a word. Yang Chun sighed and turned his eyes to the beast cultivator. The monster cultivator, under the huge pressure of Yang Chun, seemed to suddenly collapse. He was about to shout, but suddenly he seemed to remember something. He forcibly suppressed the shout and hurriedly said in a loud voice, I remember, a friend of mine told me that someone chased a woman last month, saying that he wanted to snatch the red sun iron soul from that woman. But later the woman escaped. As soon as he heard the red sun iron spirit, Yang Chun knew that his plan had worked. With a thought, the Tao disciple was directly sucked by the blood demon vine. Accompanied by the screams of the Tao disciple, Yang Chun, like a kind old man, walked to the opposite side of the beast cultivator with a smile on his face. The beast cultivator could already speak. It seemed that the beast cultivators in the 100,000 mountains still had some cultivation methods. Does your friend know? The blood demon vine directly raised the beast cultivator to the same height as Yang Chun. As if to confirm, Yang Chun asked again. My friend knows. He told me this himself. The beast cultivator knew that his life was in sight and nodded hurriedly. Where is your friend? Take me to him. As soon as Yang Chun spoke, there was no room for refusal. Yes, yes. The beast cultivator nodded in a hurry, and then said carefully, You see, it's not convenient for me to do this. Can you let go a little bit? Give me the soul. Yang Chun ordered without hesitation. He could let go, but Yang Chun must be in control of the other party's life and death. Otherwise, if he accidentally let him escape, Yang Chun did not want the clue that had just been in his hand to be broken again. The beast cultivator had no choice but to send the soul over. This was different from the kind of alliance between the two sides. It could be directly controlled by the other party to kill. Now that his life and death were in the hands of Yang Chun, the beast cultivator did not dare to play any tricks and obediently handed over the soul. Yang Chun took the beast cultivator's soul into his sea of consciousness. Only then did he know that this beast cultivator turned out to be a wolf. This wolf demon did not know what transformation secret art he had cultivated. He had turned into a strange appearance. Yang Chun did not find his original appearance at first. After getting the other party's soul, Yang Chun controlled the blood phantom vine and let go of the wolf demon. The soul was controlled by Yang Chun, and the wolf demon did not dare to have any rebellion. He just obediently followed Yang Chun's instructions and gathered the chinquin bags of the dead guys and handed them over to Yang Chun. After a simple search, there was nothing too precious on these guys. In addition to a few flying swords, Yang Chun did not ask for anything else. He directly gave several chinquin bags to the wolf demon. Take me to find your friend, and these things are your reward. Not only did he not die, but he also got a windfall. The wolf demon's spirit was lifted, and he nodded hurriedly and began to fly in a certain direction with Yang Chun. After flying for almost 3 days, the wolf demon's body slowly descended and pointed to the front. He said to Yang Chun with a slight worry, My friend should be in the mountains ahead, but I have to spend some time to find him. It may take a day or two. Go and come back soon. Yang Chun nodded, then found a place to sit down and began to close his eyes. With the permission of Yang Chun, the wolf demon hurriedly left and went into the forest, disappearing in a moment. In Yang Chun's hand, the bottle cap of the medicine garden appeared again. He was still sitting there, but his mind was immersed in the dome hall. Chapter 295. In the hall, Wan Qian and her 6 apprentices were still sitting cross-legged and cultivating. In the hall with a strong spiritual power, although the 6 people had only cultivated for a short year, it seemed that they had made more progress than in the past hundreds of years. The 5 Jidan stage masters had been completely controlled by Yang Chun. Only Wan Qian, the Yuanying stage ancestor, still lost her active consciousness. After being simply hypnotized by Yang Chun, she only knew how to immerse herself in cultivation and didn't know anything else. There was such a Yuanying stage master around, but she could only practice, which was a great waste. Although Yang Chun couldn't make Wan Qian be like her disciple and let him command her, it was still possible to let her do some simple attacks. When he thought of the 5 directions mystic fairies formation besieging the enemy, suddenly a Yuanying stage master would jump out and attack. It would also come and go without a trace. It was definitely an excellent master. Simple hypnosis, even if Wan Qian was already a Yuanying stage ancestor, but she had lost all active consciousness, it was still easy to complete. Of course, Yang Chun couldn't use his own spiritual awareness to indirectly control Wan Qian, but he could do a few commands to make Wan Qian do the corresponding actions. Simple commands, attack, escape, sneak attack, hide, practice, etc., were not too complicated. Even so, Yang Chun still spent more than a day to firmly send these things into the depths of Wan Qian's consciousness and familiarize her with them, making her think that Yang Chun was her master. After doing all this, Yang Chun seemed to have another layer of security. It was just that Wan Qian and her apprentices had not yet changed their faces and could not appear easily. In the short term, Yang Chun could only let the 6 women cover their faces first, But this was obviously not a long-term solution. In the future, he would have time to change the image of these women. Shikuei and Xie Sha were like dragons returning to the sea and tigers released into the mountains. In such an environment as the 100,000 Mountains, they seemed to have a feeling of enjoying themselves. Finally, they knew the importance. They just hid in this area and did not delay Yang Chen's important matters. The demon wolf did not let Yang Chen wait for a long time. One day later, the demon wolf appeared in front of Yang Chen with another demon beast. Without the shape-shifting art, the wolf demon was a very ferocious monster, and the other demon beast was a huge spider. My friend would often scatter its big net in the air and on the ground. It doesn't hurt people, but it does so to know what the cultivators who pass by are doing. The wolf demon explained on behalf of the spider spirit, which seemed to indirectly explain why the spider spirit would know the reason for being chased. Yang Chen accepted this reason, and he began to believe that the spider spirit really did know something. If he wanted information, Yang Chen was not stingy at all. He dug out 1,000-year-old ginseng from the herb garden and held it in his hand. "Tell me everything you know. If it's true, I'll give this to you." The 1,000-year-old ginseng was a great temptation for the spider demon cultivator at the golden core stage. Even the wolf demon at the side wanted to drool, but he knew that Yang Chen would not give it to him. They wanted to besiege and kill Yang Chen. Yang Chen did not kill him, not to mention that he gave his companions the Chinquin bag. This ginseng, he did not want to have extravagant hopes. The soul was in the hands of Yang Chen, and the wolf demon did not dare to play tricks at all. In the past 2 days, he almost begged the spider spirit to come out. The spider spirit did not want to deal with Yang Chen, especially after hearing that Yang Chen had killed several masters of the golden core stage who besieged him. But he could not resist the plea of the wolf demon, so he came out. But now seeing the 1,000-year-old ginseng that Yang Chen took out, the spider spirit had no worries and immediately told Yang Chen what happened at the time. That day, someone was indeed chasing a woman. The woman seemed to have been seriously injured, almost fleeing with her head covered, and there were more than a dozen masters of the golden core stage chasing her. It was only because of the speed that they did not catch up with the fleeing woman in front of them. After the woman escaped from the detection range of the spider spirit's big net, the spider spirit did not know what happened later. In which direction did they chase from? Yang Chen did not nag with the spider spirit and asked the question he was most interested in. From this side, the spider spirit had a good memory, and there was a torn cobweb that recorded the direction at the time, which was very accurate. From this direction, it should be the direction where Gao Yu was hiding at the time. After Yang Chen asked about the dress of the woman who was chased at the time, he was finally sure that it was Gao Yu. Who was chasing? Yang Chen forcibly suppressed his anger and asked about the identity of those who were chasing. "I'm not very clear, but I have seen one of them." The spider spirit replied honestly, but his tone was slightly relaxed, as if he was waiting for Yang Chen's reaction, and his eyes swept over the 1,000-year-old ginseng in Yang Chen's hand from time to time. Yang Chen noticed the situation of the spider spirit and threw the ginseng over without thinking about it, as long as he could know who did it. Not to mention a 1,000-year-old ginseng, Yang Chen was willing to take out all the ginseng in the medicine garden. Who is it? At the same time as he threw the ginseng, Yang Chen also asked a question. A guy who is often tyrannical in the 100,000 Mountains, the peak of the Jidan stage, only one step away from the Yuanying stage. When the spider spirit got the ginseng, he was overjoyed and no longer kept people guessing. He said directly, "I have seen him twice before, and he was doing this kind of killing and robbing." Who is he? Yang Chen was interested in the identity of that person, not his cultivation and what he did. "It's a guard of a young master." The spider spirit thought for a while and said, "I can't tell his name. There's a long scar on his face. It is said that it was deliberately left to look fierce. This guy's cultivation is very strong. When I was hiding, I saw him hit the woman who was being chased once." "What young master?" Yang Chen asked immediately. On the surface, he was calm, but in his heart, he had directly sentenced this scar-faced man to death. "That young master is the son of the patriarch of the Hao Villa. He is very powerful. As long as he takes a fancy to something, he will rob it all. The spider spirit didn't know whether it was a bad memory or he really didn't have much contact with it. What he knew was not comprehensive, but those people are often active near the magic flame valley. Half of the killing and robbing there is done by them. People who often hang out in the 100,000 mountains know to guard against those guys. Only newcomers who don't know will be schemed against. Isn't there a rule in the auction house that the identity of the buyer and seller must not be disclosed? How can it be known? Although the spider spirit's answer was not detailed, Yang Chun was already very satisfied. This clue was very useful, and it was much more convenient to track down. Chapter 296. I don't know about the auction house. I have never been there. The spider said self-deprecatingly. I don't have anything worth auctioning. With this news, Yang Chun was already very satisfied. It was easier to know the name of Howetever Villa. When he got there, he could find anyone to know. When Yang Chun caught the knife scar, he was not afraid that he would spit it out honestly. The spider got the 1,000-year-old ginseng and left happily. The wolf demon had to act as a guide for Yang Chun because he had chased Yang Chun, but Yang Chun also said very clearly that when he reached the magic flame valley, he would let him go. Even if the wolf demon was reluctant, his soul was in the hands of Yang Chun, and he could control his life and death at any time, so he did not dare to say half a word. He obediently led Yang Chun straight to the magic flame valley. In the following days, Yang Chun seemed to be a lot more low-key and no longer took the initiative to show off. But even so, his strength in the early stage of the foundation stage still made many people who saw him have the idea of taking advantage of him. However, the moment these fellows had such thoughts, their fates were already sealed. Along the way, Yang Chun did not even expose the existence of Shi Kuei and Xie Sha. Relying on the blood demon vine alone, he had solved all the problems. The wolf demon was even more frightened along the way, especially when he saw many people with higher cultivation than him wanting to deal with Yang Chun. He was even more afraid. If something happened to Yang Chun, he would definitely die, and their lives were tied together. As a last resort, in the first few times, the wolf demon had to go out every time, persuading and even pleading, hoping that the other party would let them go. The more he behaved like this, the less the other party would put them in his eyes. But once he started, the wolf demon found that Yang Chun seemed to have the blood demon vine on him. He could summon the blood demon vine at any time and anywhere. It was a piece of cake to deal with 1 or 2 Jit-on stage masters. Although the dried corpse left by the blood demon vine after sucking up all the flesh and blood was very horrifying, after seeing a lot, the wolf demon seemed to be used to it. Moreover, he also found from the side that the young master he followed was simply a killer. As long as someone dared to have murderous intent towards him, the final outcome would be death. Especially after hearing Yang Chen's mantra of every injustice has its perpetrator and every debt has its debtor, the wolf monster also understood one thing. When Yang Chen was about to kill someone, he would definitely repeat this sentence, as if it had become a habit. Even if he didn't have the time to say this before killing someone, Yang Chen would add a sentence after killing someone. He would never miss it. So far, the wolf demon still did not know Yang Chen's name. So in the wolf demon's heart, he directly gave Yang Chen a nickname. His nickname was Every Injustice Has Its Perpetrator, and Every Debt Has Its Debtor. It sounded a little long, but the wolf demon thought it was absolutely appropriate. A month later, Yang Chen finally arrived at Magic Flame Valley. He kept his promise and returned the demon wolf soul to the demon wolf and let him go. Yang Chen entered the demon flame valley alone. Although it was a valley, it was more than 100 times larger than Cloudstop Valley. It was almost the largest marketplace in the innumerable huge mountains. Not to mention other things, there were tens of thousands of cultivators who often appeared here. There were all kinds of shops, and there was also the largest auction house. When killing those guys who had bad ideas on the way, Yang Chun had already understood some of the situation on the way. The people who attacked Gao used to be the people of Howie Villa. These people were notorious. Many people knew it, and no one hid it for them. However, how Gao Yu was targeted in the auction house was still not clear. But Yang Chun had begun to suspect that the auction house might be the culprit, but there was no evidence, so he could not be sure. Yang Chun did not just want to take revenge on Howie Villa. He also wanted to find out all the people who were related to Gao Yu's attack and make them pay the price. If they dared to touch Yang Chen's master, no one in the world could save their lives. After finding an inn to stay first, Yang Chun began to stay at home and wait for the next auction to start. His plan was very simple. If he took action at the auction, it might attract some people's attention. At that time, as long as someone came to find him, he could find out if there was a problem with the auction house. The scale of the Demon Flame Valley was large, and there were many cultivators coming and going. But what Yang Chen saw, most of them were in the Jidan stage. It seemed that the way people did things as they pleased in the innumerable huge mountains also helped the experts in the peak of the Jidan stage to form their nascent soul. Therefore, what Yang Chen saw was basically the experts in the peak of the Jidan stage. Occasionally, Yang Chen could see a few Yuanying stage experts, but they were all gone in a flash. There were not too many cultivators in the foundation establishment stage in the innumerable huge mountains, but some of the shop assistants in the marketplace were the younger generation of the foundation establishment stage. They must have been brought in by the backstage of these shops. After all, they welcomed and sent people here, so they could not mistreat the Jidan stage masters. The time that Yang Chun arrived was very coincidental. Just 10 days later, there would be a large-scale auction. This was also a custom in the innumerable huge mountains, where there was an auction every month. The innumerable huge mountains was a good place to break through to the nascent soul stage, but the spiritual power in the earth vein was not abundant. Most of the time, if cultivators wanted to cultivate, they had to rely on absorbing the spiritual power in the spirit stones. This also led to a huge demand for spirit stones here. But at the same time, the resources in the innumerable huge mountains were very rich, and the quality was very good. Usually, as long as they could find some rare things, cultivators would not hesitate to buy them with a large number of spirit stones. And the best way to maximize the benefits was through auctions. Ordinary things could be bought in the shops, but if they wanted to buy the real good things, they had to go to the auction. Everyone knew that the innumerable huge mountains was very dangerous, including the organizers of the auction house. Therefore, the auction only recognized spirit stones and not people, and all the people who entered the auction house would not meet each other. As for who won the item, no one would know. This was also an important principle to ensure that there was a continuous sale. But in the eyes of Yang Chun, it was obvious that someone in the auction house had broken the rules. Gao Yu being chased was the most direct explanation. Yang Chun wanted to verify this himself. Finally, the day of the auction opened. Yang Chun put on a stealth cloak that he had bought in advance from the public hall of the auction house a few days ago, and followed most of the people who participated in the auction and came to the entrance of the auction house. The stealth cloak could hide all the spiritual awareness exploration, and it could make the participants look exactly the same. No one could tell who was who. The only thing that could prove the identity of the buyer was the number plate that was received at the entrance of the auction house before the start of each auction. 97 was the number on the number plate that Yang Chen received. Chapter 297. Although the invisible cloak could hide the image, it had a fatal shortcoming. That was, it could not be used. Once the cloak was used, it would break immediately, which was why those guys would reveal their true faces when they killed people and robbed their goods. The auction house was very big, but it couldn't be seen from the outside at all. Yang Chen knew that this was a space similar to a medicine garden. After at least 2 masters of the Deshang stage, sacrificial refining, it had the current scale. After everyone stepped into the auction house, they automatically entered the room corresponding to the number they got. There was only one exit. They could leave the auction house directly, and they could not contact other buyers who participated in the auction. Under such circumstances, if something was bought by someone and it was known by others, it would be really strange if the auction house had no relationship. Yang Chen carefully looked at everything in the room, but he never said a word. There was only one seat in the room, and it was estimated that the room was arranged according to the number of people on the number plate. Next to the seat was a table with snacks and tea on it. No one would take the initiative to touch these. Directly opposite the seat, there was a huge window just to see the auction items and the host of the auction, and nothing else could be seen. In addition, on the handle of the seat, there was a gem-like bidding stone, which was introduced before. As long as you put your hand on it and launched your spiritual awareness, you could report your price to the host of the auction house. The people were still coming in one after another, but there were already a few small things being auctioned. Speaking of it, it was not a particularly precious thing. It was just used to warm up the scene in advance and to make the buyers who came in first not so bored. Originally, Yang Chun would not care about these things, but unexpectedly, the first thing that was brought up made Yang Chen's eyes widen. This is a small item that has been unsold in the auction for 10 years in a row. No one knows what it is used for. With the words of the host, something immediately appeared in the place where the auction items were placed. That thing looked like a weapon with a grip, but it was not like a sword, it was not like a mace, it was more like a ruler, and there were thin scales on it. However, if it was a ruler, but the scales were abnormally uneven, it really made people unable to understand what it was. I can't tell what this thing is, and the materials used aren't very high grade. The auctioneer was obviously not very optimistic about this item. His interest waned, and his tone was very casual. It's just that the owner of this item has some relationship with the auction house, so it has been on display for 10 years. The starting price is 500 high-grade spirit stones. Is there anyone interested in this thing? Although he said that he was hosting the auction, it was more of a perfunctory act. Perhaps it was just as the organizers had thought. These things at the beginning were simply to warm up the atmosphere. In fact, they didn't even wait for everyone to come in. Clearly, they were insignificant. He did not know what it was used for. It could not even be called a magic weapon. Its materials were of a low grade, yet it still cost such a high price of half a kilogram of high-grade spirit stones. If it weren't for the host saying that the owner of the auction item had a relationship with the auction house, perhaps it would have been thrown into some corner. It was very normal for an item to be left unsold for 10 years. However, Yang Chun did not even think about it. He directly placed his hand on the bidding stone and quoted the base price, 500 upper-level spirit stones. The only use of this thing is that when spiritual power is infused into it, it will change color. The auctioneer was about to continue introducing it, but suddenly heard someone bidding. After being stunned for a moment, he confirmed with some disbelief that someone had indeed bid. Then he immediately shouted, 500 upper-level spirit stones. Someone bid 500 upper-level spirit stones. Is there anyone who wants to bid a higher price? As soon as the auctioneer's words came out, almost all the people in the auction house were surprised. Every time it was used to warm up the atmosphere at the auction, it would never be sold. Someone actually bid 500 upper-level spirit stones to buy it. Everyone began to guess whether this thing was really a treasure. Otherwise, why would someone spend so much money to buy it? 500 upper-level spirit stones. Is there anyone who wants to bid a higher price? The auctioneer had already asked for the second time. However, after asking, he continued to introduce the rubbish attributes of this thing. It seemed that he was somewhat suspicious of stalling for time. The buyers who came in one after another heard the auctioneer's words and looked at the auction item. As long as they had participated in the auction in recent years, they all had a stunned expression. Someone wanted this thing? Which idiot was it? The auctioneer's side also fell into hesitation. This thing was sent by an old monster. The old monster was greedy. As long as he sent something, no matter what it was, he would set the starting price very high. It was as if he was afraid that the auction house would lose out on him. However, the old monster was strong, and ordinary people would not easily provoke him. If the starting price was high, at most it would not be sold, but it would not cause any loss to the auction house. However, the things sent by the old monster, except for a few fine items, most of them were of the type of things that looked good but were useless. So far, in fact, 9 out of 10 things used by the auction house to warm up the atmosphere were actually the old monster's rubbish. The reason why the auction house did this was to give face to the old monster. Anyway, it was not the auction house's fault that no one bought it. It could be considered as an explanation to the old monster, so that the old monster could not fall out with the auction house because the auction house did not organize an auction for him. But now, this thing that had never been used before was now really bought by someone with 500 upper-level spirit stones. How could people not pay attention to it? Who is the bidder? The manager of the auction house asked immediately. Immediately, someone sent over Yang Chen's information. The name was made up. 99 out of 100 people here used fake names. However, seeing that Yang Chen's cultivation was only in the early stage of foundation establishment, the auctioneer immediately felt relieved and quickly instructed, if no one else bids, let him buy it. Remember to keep an eye on him. After the auction is over, ask him what this thing is. The auctioneer's instructions were immediately conveyed. The auctioneer received the instructions in an instant and no longer delayed. Anyway, this thing had been hanging for so long that no one would bid. The auctioneer immediately began to ask the price for the third time, 500 upper-level spirit stones, going thrice. Although everyone was curious, no one wanted to take out 500 upper-level spirit stones, which was equivalent to 10,000 lower-level spirit stones, to compete with others for a piece of rubbish that they did not know what use it had. 500 upper-level spirit stones sold. This time, the auctioneer did not wait any longer. After a while, he directly made the decision. Chapter 298. A caddy of upper-grade spirit stones might seem like a lot to others, but for Yang Chen, it was just a drop in the bucket. What's more, with the thing in front of him, not to mention a caddy of upper-grade spirit stones, Yang Chen would not hesitate to buy it. The thing looked inconspicuous and useless, but Yang Chen knew that it was something that would only appear in the spiritual realm. It was a very ordinary but extraordinary magic weapon, the sky-measuring ruler. The reason why it was ordinary was that the material used for the sky-measuring ruler was indeed very common in the spiritual realm, but it was not as rubbish as the host said. It was just that the surface of the sky-measuring ruler was covered with a layer of ordinary material in the spiritual realm, covering its original appearance. As for saying that it was extraordinary, it was because even in the spiritual world, not everyone had such a magic weapon. At least Yang Chen had heard of it. There were only a few, and they were all owned by the big sections. This thing was called the sky-measuring ruler, but it was not really used to measure the sky, but to measure the spiritual power cultivation of the cultivator. Different realms would show different colors, and the specific level of each realm could also be shown through the scale. Normally, this thing was not very useful, but Yang Chen knew that this was a very coveted treasure, especially for experts in the bottleneck period. If they had the sky-measuring ruler, they could quickly reach the edge of a breakthrough and then break through the bottleneck. The scale on the sky-measuring ruler was not uniform, because the higher it was, the more detailed it needed to show the changes in the spiritual power cultivation. Perhaps many people thought that just showing the spiritual power cultivation did not have any substantial use. But Yang Chen was very clear that when the cultivation entered the bottleneck period, it was very enviable to have a treasure like the sky-measuring ruler. It was called the bottleneck period because for a long time, the cultivator could not perceive the progress of their cultivation and needed to use various methods to comprehend and break through. It was called the bottleneck period, but in fact, it was not completely stuck in a certain realm, but only subtle changes that the cultivator could not perceive. As long as one worked hard, there would still be some growth. With the heaven-measuring ruler, he could see the changes in his spiritual power cultivation at any time. Even if the change in spiritual power cultivation was very subtle, it could still be clearly displayed on the heaven-measuring ruler. Cultivators who had never entered a bottleneck would never be able to imagine that when they were stuck in a bottleneck and couldn't break through, a magic treasure suddenly showed that their spirit force cultivation was still growing. This situation was a huge boost to the cultivator's confidence. Confidence was the most important factor for a cultivator to overcome their inner demons. This could be seen from Grandmaster Wang Yang. Before the heaven-seizing pill, Grandmaster Wang Yang was at a bottleneck and was unable to break through. But since he had the heaven-seizing pill, his Grandmaster's cultivation had changed almost every day. Now he had vaguely become the first among the elders of Chunyang Palace. The power of confidence was evident. With the heaven-measuring ruler on him, he could sense the growth of his cultivation every day. For cultivators, this was equivalent to having no bottlenecks. At most, it could only be regarded as a slow growth of a certain stage. This huge gap in confidence and attitude was something that those who had not tasted the benefits of the heaven-measuring ruler would never understand. Yang Chun never expected that there would be such a heaven-defying magic treasure like the heaven-measuring ruler in the mortal world. What was even more unexpected was that he only spent 1 gene of upper-grade spirit stones to get the heaven-measuring ruler. The auction required the delivery on the spot. In the Shirwan Mountains, no one had such a good reputation to be able to buy on credit. When the host dropped the hammer, it also meant that Yang Chun would immediately hand over 1 gene of upper-grade spirit stones. In less than half an incense's time, the heaven-measuring ruler had been sent to Yang Chun's room and appeared on the table next to Yang Chun. However, the heaven-measuring ruler was covered by a layer of light film and could not be touched. On the other side of the table, a tray appeared. It was obvious that Yang Chun had to put the spirit stones on the tray. No matter how doubtful Yang Chun was, there was one thing that the auction house seemed to do very well, and that was to hand over the money and the goods at the same time. Yang Chun put enough spirit stones on the tray, and soon, the layer of light film on the heaven-measuring ruler disappeared without a trace. Almost at the speed of robbing, Yang Chun grabbed the heaven-measuring ruler. Without thinking about it, he first stuffed the heaven-measuring ruler into the merit ring to ensure that no one could take the heaven-measuring ruler from his hands. After doing all this, Yang Chun took a deep breath and began to pay attention to the auction itself. At this time, it was still the warm-up stage, but the following things were almost all real rubbish, and they were all rubbish with ridiculous prices and no function. The warm-up stage lasted for a full 2 incenses time, and then it began to get down to business. However, it was obvious that the heaven-measuring ruler being sold at a high price during the warm-up stage was the biggest news in this auction. It was unknown how many people were inquiring about the news of the buyer and what the heaven-measuring ruler was. Yang Chun could fully expect such a situation, but this was exactly the effect he wanted. The heaven-measuring ruler was an unexpected surprise. If it wasn't for the appearance of the heaven-measuring ruler, Yang Chun would also buy a few good things at the auction. It would attract people's attention and show that he was rich and had a low cultivation base. If someone really came to find trouble, it would be related to the auction. Middle grade flying sword rainbow glow sword. The starting price is 50 pounds of middle grade spirit stones. 40 pounds of black iron essence. The starting price is 80 pounds of middle grade spirit stones. Jidon middle stage monster core. The starting price is 50 pounds of middle-grade spirit stones. Killing Demon Killing Secret Book. The starting price is 60 pounds of middle-grade spirit stones. One by one, the auction items began to be displayed and then auctioned off one by one. However, Yang Chun did not put these things in his eyes, but Yang Chun still sold each one and raised the price. It fully showed the image of a rich man. Of course, except for the people of the auction house, no one knew that the guy who disrupted the auction was Yang Chun. Time passed quickly. After 2 hours, all the early auction items had been sold, and all of them were sold at a price twice higher than the starting price. The prosperity of the auction house was also evident. But the more it was like this, the more the fire in Yang Chun's heart was burning. If Yang Chun could prove that the auction house might be related to the attack on his master, Yang Chun would never mind washing the entire auction house with blood. Compared with his master, not to mention an auction house in the 10,000 mountains, even if it made Yang Chun offend everyone in the world, Yang Chun would not hesitate.